The last time this volcano erupted was about 500 years ago, but recently, small tremors have grown really frequent, to such an extent that scientists have been recording more than 1,000 a month. I'm talking about the Campi Flegrei supervolcano in Italy. At one point, just a few weeks ago, the area was rattled by a 4.4 magnitude earthquake with 150 tremors in just one night. It was the strongest earthquake in over 40 years. A lot of locals spent the night in their cars, but in the morning, the shakes were followed by another earthquake, a bit weaker with a magnitude of 3.6. So, is Italy in danger? Well, the quake itself wasn't big enough to cause serious damage, but it evoked a lot of panic. At the moment, local authorities are working on grandiose emergency plans. If worse comes to worse, they'll have to evacuate hundreds of thousands of people. One of the reasons is the proximity of this area to Naples with more than 3 million inhabitants. At the moment, they're even considering an option of paying people to leave their homes. Right now, schools remain closed in the Campi Flegrei area. The authorities are allocating more than 500 million euros to ensure the safety of buildings and constructions in the area. A yellow alert is still in place in the region where 80,000 people live. There's the so-called red zone, which is the most dangerous area. There are 1,250 houses in this red zone, and all of them will be at high seismic risk if an eruption begins. Plus, more than twice as many will be at medium risk. Italy is a country prone to seismic activity, and Pozzuoli is a densely populated area that is located on one of the most dangerous supervolcanoes in Europe. Campi Flegrei has 24 hidden underground craters and dwarfs the better-known Vesuvius. Yes, the very volcano that wiped the ancient Roman city of Pompeii off the face of the earth in 79 CE. This city thrived near the base of Mount Vesuvius at the Bay of Naples. In the time of the early Roman Empire, 20,000 people lived in Pompeii. They were merchants, manufacturers, farmers, and others. The soil in the region was rich and fertile, so there were lots of orchards and vineyards. Strangely, no one knew that this black earth was the legacy of an earlier eruption of Mount Vesuvius. The area was a favorite summer destination for rich Romans. Sadly, at noon on August 24, 79 CE, all this prosperity came to an end. The peak of Mount Vesuvius exploded, sending a 10-mile-high mushroom cloud of ash and pumice into the stratosphere. For the next 12 hours, the eruption was wreaking havoc on the city. Volcanic ash and a hail of pumice stones, some of which were 3 inches in diameter, showered Pompeii. It forced the city's occupants to flee in terror. Around 2,000 people holed up in stone structures and cellars, paralyzed by fear. They hoped to wait out the eruption. Who knows? Maybe if they had decided to leave the city immediately after the beginning of the eruption, they would have had some chances to survive. A westerly wind protected the city from the first stages of the eruption. But soon, a giant cloud of hot ash and gas rushed down the western slope of Vesuvius. It engulfed the city, burning everything in its way. This disastrous cloud was followed by a flood of volcanic mud and rock, which completely buried the city. As if the volcano was making sure no one would survive, a cloud of toxic gas poured onto the city, finishing the lives of a few survivors on August 25th. A flow of rock and ash followed. It collapsed roofs and walls and turned the city into a giant cemetery. When a supervolcano erupts, the consequences are usually catastrophic. Supervolcanoes have at least once had an eruption with a volcanic explosivity index of 8, which is the largest recorded number on the index. Supervolcanoes are often extremely large, with no cone at all. That's because they're typically the remains of gigantic magma chambers that once flared up, leaving behind a caldera. They're usually located over hotspots and appear when huge volumes of magma are trying to escape from deep underground. Eventually, they burst through Earth's surface. Sometimes, all this magma gets stuck, unable to break through the planet's crust. And then, massive pools of pressurized magma gather at a depth of several miles. The pressure keeps growing because more and more magma is trying to get to the surface. At one point, a super eruption goes off. The most recent super eruption happened in New Zealand. Well, when I say recent, I meant around 26,500 years ago. That's when a supervolcano beneath the surface of Lake Taupo spewed into the air more than 300 cubic miles of ash and pumice. Imagine 500,000 Great Pyramids of Giza flying up into the air at the same time. That's how incredibly powerful that eruption was. But the most exciting and confusing thing about the eruption was that the Taupo volcano didn't simply go off like many others. At first, everything was going as usual. Tons and tons of pressurized magma had built up under the surface, and the pressure was getting higher and higher. But after the rock cracked and the first portion of lava rushed out of the crater, something went wrong, and the supervolcano took a break. Only several months later, the disastrous eruption shook the ground. Thousands of tons of lava, rocks, and ash flew high into the atmosphere. The unusual pattern of Taupo still confuses scientists. The Indonesian eruption at Toba caldera 75,000 years ago was the largest eruption in the last 2 million years. Experts estimate that the eruption could have released hundreds of thousands of tons of sulfuric acid, which might have even caused a several-degree cooling of the planet's surface. But nowadays, the impact is hard to detect because of glaciers that covered the ground afterward. There are also several so-called supervolcanoes that haven't lived up to this name yet because they've never produced any super eruptions. For example, in 1883, Indonesian volcano Krakatoa went off. The power of the eruption tore the volcano's walls open, and cold seawater rushed into its molten insides. The difference in temperatures made the volcano blow up with a deafening boom. It was clearly heard 3,000 miles away in Australia. It earned the blast the title of the loudest sound in history. But even though the consequences of this event were truly catastrophic, it still turned out not powerful enough to be called a super eruption. It only had a volcanic explosivity index of 6. Then, there's also Mauna Loa. It's a shield volcano, which means it won't produce explosive eruptions, but its sheer size makes this monster of a volcano extremely dangerous. At the moment, the volcano seems to be at peace with its surroundings. Research equipment doesn't show any signs of activity on Mauna Loa, but if Mauna Loa did suddenly erupt, lava flows could reach the ocean and the most populated and touristy places like Captain Cook very fast, in a matter of hours. The last time the volcano erupted, lava got as far as the outskirts of Hilo on the other side of the island. That's where the University of Hawaii is located. Luckily, people had a few weeks' warning to get ready for the disaster. Over its recorded history, Mauna Loa has been erupting pretty regularly, almost every 6 years. On the bright side, big island volcanoes including Mauna Loa aren't really very volatile. That's because they're shield volcanoes. These volcanoes got such a name because they aren't really very high and resemble a warrior's shield placed flat on the ground. Shield volcanoes are formed by very fluid lava. It travels way farther and forms much thinner flows than the lava erupted from a stratovolcano, which is conically shaped and tall, like the infamous Krakatoa in Indonesia. So, if Mauna Loa erupts, there probably won't be ash clouds or tons of debris. The most dangerous thing will be lava. Since Mauna Loa is a shield volcano, its lava is extremely fluid and voluminous, which allows it to flow far and fast.
When we think of active volcanoes, one region comes to mind: the Ring of Fire in the Pacific Ocean. 3/4 of Earth's volcanoes sit within this belt. Compare the area to Australia, which doesn't have any volcanic activity. The old continent of Europe is also calm, or at least we like to think so. Can you guess what the most active volcano in Europe is? If you thought of Mount Etna on the island of Sicily in Italy, you were right. The volcano has erupted about 200 times and has been far from sleeping in recent decades. The last time this happened was in August 2023. The highest mountain in the Mediterranean is 500 million years old. But in Iceland, there is a much younger volcano. It sprang into action on the 10th of July 2023. In the afternoon, 3 fissures appeared in the ground on a peninsula in the southwest of the island. This was at a base of a small mountain peak. Its name means Little Ram in the local language. The volcano spewed molten lava high into the air. There were also gas plumes in the area. But the scientific community wasn't surprised by the event. They already knew about the volcanic area that stretches between the cities of Reykjavik and Keflavik. Its name is hard to pronounce. Hey, I want to buy a vowel. It had already erupted during the previous 2 summers. This activity came after 8 centuries of dormancy. In the days leading up to the latest eruption, seismologists, the scientists who study earthquakes, recorded over 12,000 tremors. When the ground opened up in July, the fissures were over 1.5 miles long. The following morning, 2 of them closed. All the lava was now coming out of the last fissure. It grew into an elongated cone, the simplest shape of volcano we are all familiar with. The lava soon filled a large crater. It grew almost 100 feet tall during the first week, and it is still growing. On the night when the eruption started, lava spread out in all directions. Its cinders set ablaze the dry moss in the vicinity. Local authorities closed off the surrounding area. There were toxic gases from the volcanoes and smoke from the burning moss. Firefighters flocked to the area. After a week, they proclaimed the area safe. Visitors soon came to witness the birth of Europe's youngest volcano. This form of tourism is quite developed in Iceland. People come from all over the world to watch active volcanoes. The land of fire and ice is home to more than 130 volcanoes. Some 30 of them are active. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. Is volcano tourism safe? In Iceland, it is. The country's authorities research and constantly monitor all of the hotspots. The island is dotted with several dozen seismic stations. These help researchers accurately predict future eruptions, and emergency services are accustomed to these sorts of events. They can quickly cordon off danger zones. This is what happened in 2010. A volcano in the south of the island, the name of which everyone struggled to pronounce, erupted. It spewed out a plume of steam and ash that was 7 miles high. This wasn't a fun time to be an air traveler. Winds carried the enormous plume southeast toward northern Europe. Many countries closed their airspace for several days for safety reasons. The volcano erupted in March, but the Earth was shaking from January the same year, so seismologists knew that an eruption was approaching. When it comes to the continent's youngest volcano, the tourist infrastructure is already there. Visitors can leave their cars at a designated parking lot. Then they go on a 5-hour-long trek. This leads to a viewing deck. Tourists are so close to the epicenter that they can feel the heat haze from the crater. The sight is the most impressive at nighttime. Safety is never a concern. Scientists regularly chart out hazard maps that outline the borders of lava fields. This way, visitors who stick by the rules are never in harm's way. More than a week after the eruption started, a section of the crater collapsed. Lava flowed downhill west of the volcano. This majestic, smoldering hot river is slow-moving lava. Scientists categorize it as an AA type. The term is Hawaiian. It describes basaltic lava that has a rough and brittle surface. The flow is composed of broken lava blocks that are called clinkers. They fall off as the substance flows. This reveals red-hot areas. The cooler sections of lava are gray and black in color. When it moves forward, it produces a distinctive sound like shattering glass. Nearly a month after the eruption of the new volcano, we got aerial footage of an interesting phenomenon. A tornado formed directly over the lava flow. This occurs due to the high temperatures in the area. When the conditions are right, a column of heated air can easily turn into a mini tornado. Scientists observed a similar event happen during the 2018 eruption of Mount Kilauea in Hawaii. The lava fields of Europe's second-largest island tell the story of the creation of Iceland. It sits above the place where the North American and Eurasian plates meet each other. Tectonic plates are huge, rocky chunks of Earth's most outer layer. There are roughly 20 of them. They rest on a partially molten layer of rock. All the lava we see on the surface starts its journey here. You could say that these plates float on molten rock. Their boundaries are unstable, so when two plates grind past each other, they release tremendous amounts of energy. The formation of volcanoes is one result. These are places where the molten rock travels upward to the surface. Iceland began to form some 60 million years ago. The tectonic plates under the ocean drifted apart. Enough lava piled up on the surface to create solid ground. This ancient rock is under the waves today. As new lava reaches the surface and cools down, it pushes the old rock away from the center of the island. That's why the oldest parts of Iceland aren't 60, but only 16 million years old. The country's active lava fields are young in geological terms. Some of them are under 1,000 years old. Scientists consider the island a hot spot for volcanoes, pun intended. Nearly a third of the basaltic lava that reaches the Earth's surface in recorded history came from Icelandic eruptions. Fissure swarms, like the ones before the 2023 eruption, cover 30% of the Nordic country. For this reason, only a quarter of the island is inhabited. Norse Vikings were the first people to settle in Iceland at the beginning of the 10th century. Nature threw them a loud welcoming party. Just a few years after their arrival, they witnessed one of the greatest volcanic eruptions in history. Vikings came from a region without volcanoes, so they had no clue as to what was going on. Today, Icelanders are used to such events. This is good because their homeland is entering a new era of volcanic activity. Volcanologists suspect that recent events are an introduction to decades of more frequent eruptions. The peninsula that is home to Earth's youngest volcano is just 17 miles southwest of Iceland's capital city. It's been dormant for a long time. Present-day eruptions there are a reminder that the natural processes that created Iceland are still ongoing. Recently, scientists discovered that there's a historical link between volcanic eruptions in the north of Europe and glaciers. Our planet went through at least 5 major ice ages. These were exceptionally lengthy periods when the average temperature on Earth dropped. The result was the expansion of ice sheets across northern Europe and North America. The last ice age ended some 10,000 years ago. Researchers are still trying to fully understand how these glacial periods affected volcanic activity. They suspect that the sheer weight of all that ice disrupts the flow of magma underground. When glaciers retreat, the pressure is lifted. This makes it easier for lava to flow upward to the surface where it bursts. You're on the grass, looking up at the blue sky, enjoying some singing birds and catching some rays. You watch different shaped clouds soaring slowly, high up in the air. Suddenly, you hear a powerful loud rumble coming from far away. You get up and notice a gigantic thick cloud ahead. But it's not the size that scares you, it's the shape. The cloud looks like a skull. Don't worry, it doesn't mean anything bad's gonna happen. Anyway, it's not even a cloud. A few years ago, a skull formed out of thick smoke over Mount Vesuvius in Italy. That's the same volcano that erased the ancient city of Pompeii from the face of the earth. Of course, back then, many people were afraid that the volcano would erupt again. Luckily for everyone, the volcano's still in a deep sleep. It was just a nearby forest fire that caused the famous skull cloud. But the locals weren't so sure. Some thought that the fire and the skull were set on purpose. Wouldn't be the first time. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Population, well, just look around. Looks a little scary. Bare trees, no animals, no people. All the buildings are empty. Roads are all cracked and strewn with gravel. No cars, obviously. Thick smoke everywhere. This town's been burning for more than 50 years. Centralia used to be a mining town. One of its coal mines was abandoned, and locals used it as a dump for their trash. Then, according to most people, the city decided to get rid of the trash in the usual way, by burning it. The plan was a major failure. Let's see what could have possibly gone wrong here. The trash fire got deep into the mine's tunnels, ignited the coal that's still down there, and has been burning steadily ever since. The level of carbon dioxide shot up, and they had to shut down the other mines nearby for safety. No one could stop the fire, and the underground flames spread beneath the city. Roads began to warm up, the soil went sour, and the streets slowly filled with smoke and smog. In 2017, there were only 5 people living there. Welcome to Abraham Lake in Canada. It's completely frozen. You step onto the transparent ice and look down at what lies beneath. No fish, just some mysterious frozen bubbles. They look like small clouds frozen in ice, or jellyfish who forgot to pack a winter jacket. There are thousands of these little bubbles made up of methane. But don't try to dig a hole in the ice to touch it. Methane is highly flammable. It's created by methane-producing bacteria that eats leaves, grass, insects, and any other organic stuff that gets into the lake. When the methane touches the frozen water, it turns into tens of thousands of frozen little balls. When the ice melts, they burst open and sizzle. If you lit a match over them at just the right moment, the lake would look kind of like an erupting volcano. Similar lakes can be found near some shores of the Arctic Ocean. There, the size of the bubbles can reach several times the size of hot air balloons. Beautiful for sure, but not exactly safe. The next shocking lake is in Indonesia, on the island of Java. You come to a majestic volcano overgrown with grass and trees. The volcano seems to be asleep, but smoke is pouring out of it. You, of course, climb to the summit. Exhausted, tired, sweaty, you're ready to cool off. Nice work, you made it to the top. You look into the mouth of the volcano. No boiling lava, just a beautiful, bright turquoise lake down there. It looks like an oasis. Perfect time for a refreshing dip. You run down and get ready to jump in. But that's not water, that's acid. Sulfurous gases get into the lake from under the volcano. The lake itself is full of metals. When the gases touch them, they form that beautiful turquoise acid. Better head back to the nearest village, rest, and come back at night when it's cooler. In the dark, the lake seems to grow. Right above it, you see light-filled, exploding little clouds. The sulfurous gases rise out of the lake, combine with the air, and flash bright blue. Still, don't get too close. Up in the sky, underground, volcanoes, lakes? Time to head out to sea. You get on a yacht and sail off. It doesn't matter where, this next one happens all over the world. So, the sea is crystal clear and calm, there's no wind in your sails. Everything is so peaceful. Wait, what's that? You hear a loud noise. 2 seconds later, a huge wave, way taller than your mast, rises from the calm sea and hits your yacht. The ship manages to stay upright, and the huge wave disappears. You just survived the attack of a rogue wave. Some scientists think it happens when the surface sea current smashes into a strong headwind. Others say it happens when warm and cold currents come up against each other. Another popular theory is wave interference, where small waves team up to form one monster one. Under certain conditions, waves get a sort of superpower. Out of all the waves in the area, there'll be one which sucks the energy out of all the others. When it's full, the wave spits it all out. Maybe that's why the wave's so strong, but only lasts an instant. What about clouds? Scary? Well, they can be, if they're huge thunderclouds, walls of gray and black blocking out the sun, the moon, and the stars. First, you're relaxing in your backyard. Then you see thunderclouds. Then you get thunderstorms, hail, floods, and even tornadoes. They're easy to spot thanks to their epic appearance, thick, heavy, and dark. They can even sparkle inside because of lightning. That's one scary-looking cloud. But before you run away, let's see how it forms. Clouds are like roller coasters. Imagine you're a small drop of water hanging out with your friends in the ocean, waiting in line for the brand new ride that just opened up. It's time. You strap in. nothing happens. Then you feel it. The roller coaster starts to go up, up, up. You can see all your droplet friends down there. They're so small. You keep rising, just waiting for the big whoosh, but nothing happens. Then you're so high up that you're in the clouds. It's not so scary up here, and there are loads of your friends. Nice. It's starting to get cold. You look around, it's happening to everyone. You're being turned into beautiful ice crystals, so shiny and pretty. The clouds filling up, getting kind of cramped with all those other water droplets. Still, what a peaceful, enjoyable, wow! The ride kicks back in and you start to free fall. Slowly at first, then faster and faster, thousands of your fellow drops falling back to Earth, some holding on tight to the handrail, some laughing and waving their hands in the air. Woohoo! And splash! Still, I like the lightning ride better. That's one where they strap you in, you ride up, and then you play bumper cars way up in the clouds. The more times you bump into another water droplet, the more lightning you create. Now, not all lightning happens inside clouds. There's a rare phenomenon called a dirty thunderstorm. The lightning happens above a volcano. The most famous is in Japan. It erupts almost every day and spits black clouds high into the air. So, it's super scary volcano clouds, plus lightning. Whoa! Regular lightning happens during a storm when ice crystals bump into each other. In a dirty thunderstorm, bits of volcanic ash collide, create friction, and spark up the sky. Okay, better finish the journey with something safe and beautiful. No more cloud roller coasters, please. You're in the Atacama Desert in northern Chile, one of the driest places on Earth. But this desert has a beautiful secret. Every 3 to 5 years, flowers pop up out of nowhere. It's so famous, it's also called the flowering desert. Seeds lie around in the ground just waiting for some rain. When the desert gets enough water, about 200 types of flowers sprout up. The yellow sands of the Atacama turn purple, white, green, and pink. So this huge volcano, everyone thought to be extinct, woke up and spat out a black ash cloud 50 miles high. That's about 9 times as tall as Mount Everest. Located in what is now Indonesia, the powerful Krakatoa had caused huge tsunamis that rocked over ships as far away as South Africa. It also changed the temperatures around the world for several years. The volcanic island of Krakatoa in the Sunda Strait was likely born thanks to another major eruption several centuries ago. It hadn't erupted for at least 200 years before 1883. So the first tremors and blasts in May of that year came as a total shock to people living nearby. Then ships sailing through the busy water passage started reporting clouds of ash above the volcano. It went quiet again for a while, but they could still see ash above it. The eruption culminated at the end of August. It was so powerful that it shattered the island into fragments. Witnesses heard the sound produced by it in Australia, around 3,000 miles away. They described the noise as the roar of heavy cannons. Some say it was the loudest sound ever heard. During the next 5 days, the pressure wave from the eruption traveled around the globe 3.5 times and was seen on barographs on different continents. Hot avalanches of ash spread down the volcano as far as 25 miles away at crazy speeds. They ruined the surrounding islands and took 36,000 lives. Tens of thousands more drowned in tsunamis that happened after the volcano had collapsed into the caldera. Over 100 coastal villages on Java and Sumatra were completely wiped out. All this made the waking up of Krakatoa one of the most devastating in the entire recorded history. The Earth's crust is like a giant puzzle, made up of massive pieces known as tectonic plates. These plates are constantly sliding against each other over the mantle, which is the molten layer beneath. Indonesia is right in the middle of the so-called subduction zone. Here, the Indo-Australian plate collides with part of the Asian plate as it moves northward. As the oceanic plate dives down, it gets heated up, and you've got the perfect recipe for a volcanic hotspot. Krakatoa had 3 peaks, each serving as an exit door for a massive magma chamber beneath it. During a previous eruption, debris blocked one of these exits, and the pressure built up beneath. When Krakatoa finally blew its top, the blast split the magma chamber wide open. The eruption led to a so-called volcanic winter. Krakatoa had sent 6 cubic miles of rock, ash, and debris into the atmosphere. They created a thick veil that surrounded the Earth. The particles scattered sunlight, and the troposphere below cooled down. The effect stayed strong for several years. The northern hemisphere experienced colder-than-average temperatures, and in some regions, summer temperatures didn't rise to typical levels. Southern California received a record amount of rainfall in the months following the eruption. The sky became darker in different parts of the world for years afterwards. The sunsets, for many months, turned into a spectacular show of red and orange. One astronomer supposed it was the source of the inspiration for The Scream by Edvard Munch. The painting shows exactly what the sky over Norway looked like after the eruption. It also produced a rare type of halo called Bishop's Ring and a volcanic purple light at night. For several years after Krakatoa had blown up, the moon looked blue and sometimes green. That's because some ash clouds were full of particles large enough to scatter red light, only letting other colors pass. Someone even witnessed lavender sun and night-shining clouds. Krakatoa became the first scientifically well-recorded and studied eruption of a volcano. Between the moments the first clouds of ash were seen by a ship passing by and the disastrous eruption, scientists managed to organize geological expeditions. They studied the volcano and gathered samples of volcanic rocks. It became useful for understanding volcanic activity. Krakatoa was sleeping tight until the 1920s, when some locals noticed a column of steam and debris spewing from the collapsed caldera. Within weeks, the rim of a new cone sprang up above sea level. After a year, it was a small island named Child of Krakatoa. It continues to erupt, but fortunately without serious consequences so far. In April of 1815, Mount Tambora unleashed a massive eruption, wreaking havoc on the Indonesian island of Sumbawa. It destroyed homes and claimed 10,000 lives. Another 80,000 perished because of diseases that spread in the aftermath. The following went in history as the year without a summer. Cold, wet conditions wrapped Europe and North America in an unexpected chill. It became the coldest in at least 250 years. In the summer of that year, the temperatures dropped the most. Crops didn't grow, livestock didn't survive, and famine took over Western Europe and North America. New England had snow and terrible frost in the summer months. Food prices went up. Oats for horses became a luxury. Some people say it even inspired the invention of the bicycle in 1817. Scientists used early data and climate models to see if it was all because of the Tambora eruption. They compared the data to similar years. They showed that precipitation was around the same, but the temperatures were much warmer. When they introduced the volcano into the scenario, they got the exact data for the year without summer. They say that a powerful volcanic eruption like that one increases the likelihood of extreme cold by up to 100 times. The explosion of the Toba supervolcano on the island of Sumatra around 74,000 years ago became the Earth's largest volcanic eruption in 28 million years. Parts of Indonesia, India, and a slice of the Indian Ocean got a cozy blanket made up of 6 inches of volcanic debris. It spat out a volume of rock comparable to almost 3 million Empire State Buildings. The crater it had left behind is still seen from space. All the ash and volcanic gases that sprang into the atmosphere because of the eruption partially blocked the sunlight. A severe volcanic winter began and lasted for 6 to 10 years. Some anthropologists see a connection between the Toba eruption and how limited modern humans are when it comes to genetic variety. Around 74,000 years ago, exactly when the Toba erupted, there was a population nosedive. That's why all modern humans trace their roots back to a tiny group of survivors. The Toba catastrophe theory proposes that most early humans in Europe and Asia didn't make it through the post-eruption climate chaos. Instead, a lucky, genetically limited bunch found their safe haven in Africa. But archaeological and paleoclimate records disagree with this theory. Benjamin Black from Rutgers University and his team set out to crack the code and discovered a hidden paradox. Maybe we were peering through the wrong climate lens. They ran 42 different climate model simulations, varying the magnitude of volcanic emissions, time of year of the eruption, background climate state, and eruption column height to see what climate disruptions the Toba eruption might have caused. There was a significant drop in temperatures in the northern hemisphere in the first year after the event, up to 18 degrees Fahrenheit. The southern hemisphere, where the early humans were settling, didn't go through a rough cooling that could have affected them all. The most significant eruptions that can seriously change the world's climatic patterns come from supervolcanoes, like Yellowstone or Mount Toba. Luckily, these erupt very rarely, about every 100,000 years or more. Still, climate scientists study volcanic eruptions to understand and explain short periods of cooling in the history of our planet. Every few decades or so, a volcanic eruption lets out a substantial number of particles and gases. Some of them will block enough sunlight to start a brief global cooling period. Nothing like the real volcanic winter, but still felt across the globe.
The ground suddenly starts shaking. Clouds of gas start forming in the sky, making it dark during broad daylight. Bits of the ground start swelling, lifting, and even collapsing. These are the telltale signs of a volcano that is bound to erupt. And this is what could easily happen again with Mount Spur. It's only about 75 miles from Anchorage, one of Alaska's busiest cities. More than half of the population of the northernmost state of the US live there. There's also a huge amount of air cargo that passes through its international airport daily. So anytime a volcano this close to such a vital hub begins to get restless, people start paying attention. Just FYI, approximately 350 million people in the world live within the danger range of an active volcano. That means that around 1 out of 20 people live in an area at risk of volcanic activity. Alaskans probably wish that Spur's reawakening was fiction, but it's actually true. The Alaska Volcano Observatory picked up on several of these "I'm about to erupt" signs from Mount Spur. So much so that they raised the alert level to yellow, which means unrest above normal background levels. Spur erupted twice in the 90s, and it was pretty intense. If we were ranking volcanic eruptions on a scale from 1 to 10, these eruptions would rank a 6 or 7. Not that terrible, but still worth 10 to 17 million in damages. However, these numbers are nothing compared to Alaska's 1988 Redoubt eruption, another volcano that erupted and summed up a staggering $345 million in damages. Mainly because its ashes hit aircraft engines, such as the KLM 747 that lost power after all its engines went off due to the ashes. If people weren't paying attention to Alaska's unstable geology before that, well, they surely started to after it. When you think of the hazards of volcanic activity, the first thing that might possibly pop in your mind is Pompeii, Italy. Of course, that's the worst-case scenario, a city being engulfed by lava. Spur may seem innocent compared to Vesuvio, but it still took its toll. The last time it erupted in the 90s, and it threw volcanic aerosols over 60,000 feet into the atmosphere. Let's get our science straight here. Think of volcanic aerosols like liquid particles that are released into the atmosphere during an eruption. These particles are usually created when gases from a volcano, such as sulfur dioxide, combine with water and other particles that exist in our atmosphere. These aerosols can actually cool the Earth's surface since they reflect sunlight directly back into space. And that's not the worst part. It can stay in the atmosphere for several years after an eruption, causing lots of health issues. The eruption unleashed blazing fast avalanches of hot gas and ash called pyroclastic flows, along with thick, muddy floods known as lahars. Oh, and there were also the massive volcanic boulders. These rock chunks were huge, some over 3 feet long, and they blasted out from the volcano like nature's cannonballs, landing more than 6 miles away. All that volcanic heat melted part of a nearby glacier, kicking off debris flows that dammed up the Chakachatna River and created a whole new lake along the valley. Some good came out of Spur's first eruption, though. The main lesson was, volcanic monitoring pays off. The local monitoring was able to reduce the economic damage done by the eruption, especially for a city that has an intense air traffic. Spur is deemed as dormant for the moment, but it could go off anytime soon. You see, volcanoes are classified as active, dormant, or extinct, depending on how much action they're putting on. If it's still active, it's still rumbling and erupting somewhat regularly. Dormant means it's had some recent activity, but it's still lying low for now. And extinct, that's when it's been quiet for such a long time that we figure it's done for good. One of the US's most dangerous active volcanoes is Mount St. Helens. This volcano is actually responsible for the most powerful eruption in US history. Its last blast was so intense, it threw off about 1,300 feet off its summit. Basically, the top of the mountain vanished, and if you thought Mount Spur's ash cloud was impressive, St. Helens wins the competition since it launched its ashes 80,000 feet into the sky. Eastern Washington plunged into total darkness. But it wasn't just that. In a matter of 3 minutes, the eruption hurled 3.7 billion cubic yards of blazing rock and dust, enough to fill 1 million Olympic-sized pools across 230 square miles of lush forest. Actually, the earthquakes that anticipated the eruption started weeks before May 18, 1980. A ground shake of magnitude 5.0 went off, triggering a landslide on one side of the volcano. By the end of the official eruption date, 57 people had lost their lives. Nearly 7,000 big-game animals like deer and elk were wiped out, and millions of birds laid scattered on the burnt earth. Researchers don't think St. Helens will blow at the same magnitude again anytime soon, but they're keeping an eye on it, because this volcano is not exactly finished. By the way, the word volcano comes from the Roman name Vulcan, which was the Roman deity of fire, and they often happen at the meeting point of tectonic plates, which are the pieces of the Earth's surface that fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. The so-called Ring of Fire, located in the Pacific Ocean, is the world's danger zone when it comes to volcanoes. It contains between 750 and 915 active volcanoes. The largest volcano located in the Ring of Fire, also the largest active volcano in the world, is the Mauna Loa. It's over 13,000 feet high, and it's located in Hawaii. Researchers say that Mauna Loa has been erupting for at least 700,000 years. Its most recent eruption began on the 27th of November 2022, and it lasted until December 13th. It's been quiet since the 80s until it decided to wake up again. Thanks to constant monitoring by the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, it didn't cause any casualties when it last erupted. Scientists have been investing big time on volcanic monitoring, not only to reduce economic hazards, but also to save lives. The most recent attempt has been to drill into volcanoes. Recently, a group of scientists went all the way to Iceland in one of the world's volcanic hotspots. There are around 33 active volcanoes in Iceland alone, but the one that is the most interesting to them the most is the Krafla volcano. The Krafla has erupted around 30 times in the last 1,000 years, and its most recent eruption was in the mid-1980s. The project named Krafla Magma Testbed, or KMT for short, is hoping to advance the understanding of how magma behaves underground. The main advantage of this drilling research is predicting the risk of eruptions, but it can also help to push geothermal energy forward. I mean, can you imagine having electricity that is run by the limitless source of volcano power? The KMT team will begin drilling holes deep into volcanic ground in 2027. They're aiming at reaching over a mile into the ground, After all, it's different to monitor lava activity when it's on the surface than when it is still below ground. This will allow researchers to listen to the pulse of the Earth, according to them. They're saying this research is as revolutionary as the first time man went to the moon. Oh, and speaking of that, I was shocked to discover that volcanoes exist all throughout the solar system. Yep, other planets and moons have volcanoes too. The largest volcano in our solar system is Olympus Mons on Mars. It's a shield volcano, much like the ones that make up the Hawaiian Islands. It's about 370 miles wide. If we transported it all the way back to Earth, it would almost occupy all of Poland. Yikes.
Hey, ever heard of a fire rainbow? Yeah, me neither. How about a circumhorizontal arc? Didn't think so, but just so you know, they're one and the same thing. At first glance, it looks like a painting, or like a rainbow-colored splash in the sky. Despite the name, they have nothing in common with either fire or rain. This phenomenon happens on rare occasions when the sun shines through a particular type of ice cloud formation. The rainbow halos are just as unique. Again, a specific type of ice crystals in clouds needs to be present for the surface of the Earth to bend light from the sun into a perfect ring. The same thing can happen with moonlight. The only difference will be that moon halos are usually white and sun halos can be rainbow-colored. When visiting regions with high altitudes, you may be one of the lucky people to stumble upon penitentes. They're basically naturally formed ice spikes. For them to be formed, they need a really cold and elevated environment where the air is dry. The sunlight turns ice directly into vapor rather than melting it into water. And that's why these blades of snow and ice start to pop up on the surface of the Earth. As cute as they may be, they can end up as tall as 15 feet. Now, what happens when small individual droplets of lava meet the wind? Pele's hair, basically. Let me explain. The word Pele comes from an ancient Hawaiian symbol for volcanoes. Whenever the wind picks up little drops of lava, it stretches them into hair-like strands, similar to the process of glass wire creation. These delicate strands can stretch as far as 6 feet. On rare occasions, it can rain without any clouds. But does it really? Let's look at the science behind this rare phenomenon. It's sometimes called a sun shower, just because it looks like the rain is falling straight from the sun. Let's be clear though, there is no way rain can ever come down directly from a star. Rain clouds are at a bit of a distance from that specific location. With sun rays being angled, the clouds become out of sight. Add a little wind to blow the rain in your direction and ta-da! You get sun showers. Located in Bolivia is a place called Salar de Uyuni. It's the largest salt flat in the world. It's also the home of half of the world's lithium, which is a crucial component for making batteries. But what else is so special about this place? Well, whenever the rain season comes, it turns this piece of flat land into a perfectly reflective mirror lake. What comes to your mind when you hear about the Blood Falls? A horror movie? Well, they are merely a series of waterfalls located in one of the driest regions of Antarctica. They emerge from an underground lake filled with a special kind of bacteria. These little organisms use sulfates as fuel instead of sugars, which makes them very intriguing for scientists. The water contained in this lake is so full of iron that it basically just rusts when it meets the air. Hence, the reddish color of the waterfall, which also gives it its trademark name. Okay, we all know the song, but it's not really made up. There is actually such a thing called a desert rose. It's not a plant though, but a unique form of the mineral gypsum. It develops in dry sandy places that can occasionally flood. This constant switching between a wet and dry environment lets the gypsum crystals emerge between grains of sand, trapping them and forming a rose-like shape. Ever heard of the Eye of Sahara? Scientists are still trying to figure out how it was formed. You can only see it if you fly above it, but it's basically a naturally formed dome that dates back to approximately 100 million years ago. And no, I wasn't around then. It has a rough diameter of 25 miles and consists of a bunch of concentric rings. The biggest one, or the central area, measures about 19 miles in diameter. Astronauts were some of the first people to notice it, and it's been studied ever since. In fact, even to this day, when landing in Florida, they know they're almost home when they see the Eye of Sahara. One of the most beautifully colored trees in the world is located in the Philippines and Indonesia. It's called the rainbow eucalyptus. It got its name because of its bark that switches colors and peels away as the tree ages. The bright green bark is the youngest, as it contains a substance called chlorophyll, usually found in leaves. It then switches to purple and then to the color red. And finally, it turns brown as it grows and loses the chlorophyll. Now, don't be tricked into thinking that's a whole forest. It's one single tree. And no, it's not some sort of optical illusion either. Let me explain. Underneath that soil, there is a complex network of roots that connects around 47,000 tree-like shapes you see above the ground. It's called the quaking aspen. Some of these trees are among the oldest and largest organisms in the world. Now, here's a good destination for all travelers, or maybe not so good after all. The most lightning-stricken area in the world, according to recent data released by NASA, is Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela. Out of all the days in a year, 300 of them feature thunderstorms in this location. What makes this area so unique, though, that storms happen so often? Well, it's because where cool mountain air meets the warm, moist breeze and generates electricity over the lake. The Eternal Flame Falls are located in upstate New York, near the Canadian border. In this region, there is a tiny waterfall with a big secret, a spark about 8 inches tall. Turns out there's a natural gas seep that provides fuel to the flame behind the waterfall. The waterfall provides enough coverage so that it stays lit pretty much every time. Hikers do enjoy to relight it if they see that it's been blown out. This phenomenon is actually quite common, but this one gained more popularity because it is younger than most. And it looks very good in pictures, let's be honest. I've heard of yellow sand, white sand, and even black sand here or there. But I've never heard of green beaches until now. Papacolia, also known as Green Sand Beach, is located in Hawaii and is one of the few beaches in the world that features green sand. The unique coloring comes from olivine rock that was formed when a nearby volcano erupted. Actually, in Hawaii, all the volcanoes are nearby. Move over green sands because some of the other beaches around the world can even glow at night, and it's completely natural. The culprit? A little thing called photoplankton, or microalgae as they're sometimes called. They're basically little plants that contain chlorophyll and need sunlight in order to live and grow. Most photoplankton kinds are able to float in the upper part of the ocean, where the sunlight can still reach them beneath the water. When the photoplankton gets agitated by the movement of waves and currents, they emit light, which looks like some glow during the night. These special microorganisms are found on beaches in a lot of places around the world, such as the Maldives, Puerto Rico, and the Everglades. At the base of a mountain located just outside of Afton, Wyoming, is a little river called the Intermittent Spring. There are only 3 of this kind in the whole world, but what makes this little string of water so mysterious? Well, the fact that it starts and stops every few minutes. Scientists have yet to pinpoint precisely why this happens. They speculate that it's basically just a siphon effect that happens deep within the ground that causes the river to just start and stop so often. Should you ever be interested in checking it out, be sure to do so in the late summer, as that's when the intermittent spring is most active. Do you see the irony here? You can only see the spring in the summer? Okay, I'm done.
Hey, don't we all love wintertime? Gingerbread cookies and sitting by the fireplace. And frozen methane bubbles? Freezing temperatures afford humanity the pleasure of some very weird winter phenomena. Let's go take a look at some of them. Beneath the surface of Canada's Lake Abraham in Alberta, or beneath other lakes across Antarctica, you'll witness a truly mesmerizing phenomenon of ice bubbles. From the top, they look like glittering jewels. But these bubbles don't meet our expectations, as they never pop. They just freeze midway, before ever reaching the surface. So how did they get there in the first place? And what are they made of? Some of them come from gas released from the melting of glaciers, while others are a result of the decomposing of organic matter lying at the bottom of the lakes. Now, they sure look pretty, but they're also pretty harmful to human life. These bubbles are made of methane, and they can intoxicate you. So, if I were you, I wouldn't get too close. If you're driving on a curvy hillside road when a snow squall begins, you'd be wise to stop driving immediately. A snow squall is the winter equivalent of a severe thunderstorm. The thing is, they're difficult to predict and very fast-moving. There can be sunshine, but then all of a sudden, a huge snow squall might start. If you haven't heard this term before, it's because the National Weather Service in the US only began using it in 2018. They called it a squall because it reduces a lot of our visibility and can be very dangerous if you don't take it seriously. But still, falling snow is beautiful, even if it's that crazy. Say this winter you decided to finally visit the famous Niagara Falls. Located between the US and Canada, these falls are the 5th largest waterfall in the world, with over 3,000 tons of falling water per second. In winter, the area looks like a winter wonderland and is home to an interesting phenomenon, a frozen fall. No, this isn't the work of Hollywood or an internet prank. Niagara Falls can actually form a layer of ice. This happens when the falls have been exposed to frigid temperatures for a long time. So, the surface water and mist in the air turn to ice, giving the impression that the entire waterfall is frozen. But that's not exactly what happens. If you look closely into the ice, you'll notice that there's still plenty of flowing water. Have you ever heard of something called a natural snowball? This is a rare yet beautiful environmental phenomenon that happens when smaller pieces of ice end up being rolled by strong winds and water. The further they roll, the more ice they gather, and the more that ice is polished. They end up as giant, perfectly shaped snowballs. They would look pretty amazing on their own, but hundreds of them together? That's some scenery. Some snowballs turn into huge rolling donuts. These rare shapes happen only in perfect temperature conditions, when the snow is in the perfect state between hard and fluffy. It happens when a snowball begins rolling down, gathering more and more snow until suddenly its middle part collapses. This allows for the snowball to get its donut shape. Does it also taste as good as a donut? I guess not, right? Oh, almost forgot. If you want to see them in real life, you have to go to some severely cold places. But still, people reported having seen them in Ottawa, in the Midwest of the US, and even in Scotland. If you go for a walk in the woods at the beginning of winter, you might stumble upon a magical phenomenon known as frost flowers. These flower-shaped phenomena are rare and occur only when the temperature of the air is freezing, but the ground is still moist. When the perfect conditions align, vapor coming out of stems form these veil-thin patterns that make up delicate flower-like ice. Don't try to pick them, you'll break them. And certainly don't try to plant them anywhere else, as they aren't real flowers. Oh, and be sure to go before the sun is too strong, otherwise it'll melt these delicate things. Say you just check the forecast and the weather for the day is -8 degrees Fahrenheit. Maybe you'd choose staying home underneath the blankets, but I'm sure you'd change your mind if you had the option of this day trip. Picture Yellowstone Park under a few feet of snow on a sunny day. Well, if that didn't do it for you, then add some snow-covered bison and steamy geysers to the scenery. Still not convinced? How about the chance to see the rare phenomenon of hoarfrost? If you haven't heard of them before, they're a geometrically enchanting type of frost that you can see when moisture in the air skips the droplet stage and appears directly as ice crystals on top of a leaf. They're much more photogenic than your windshield or garden variety frost. FYI, the term hoarfrost comes from Old English, meaning a frost that resembles an old man's beard. Well, what do you say? Does this actually look like a beard? You're walking in a frost-covered forest on a freezing day, when suddenly you hear a loud banging sound. No, it's not an avalanche nor an earthquake. You're in the middle of a frostquake. If only that meant that you'd see beautiful snow crystals cracking on the floor, but that's not quite the case. Frostquakes, also known as ice quakes, happen when the moisture below the ground starts to freeze and expand. It's normal for things to expand in their frozen state. Just look at an ice cube, for example. These frostquakes can move rocks and the soil above and cause loud cracking sounds as if the world were falling apart. Don't worry though, it's not. If you happen to see black ice, be careful. Although we call it that, black ice isn't really black. It's made up of a thin layer of ice that looks black due to the color of concrete or earthy ground. It blends in so well with the ground that it's almost impossible to spot. It forms during winter days when the ground is wet from rain or melted snow, and the temperature suddenly drops below freezing temperatures. So, this thin layer emerges, multiplying considerably your chances of slipping while walking on bridges or overpasses. It's also pretty common on spots on the road that are shaded by trees. This next phenomenon happens in a very specific wintry context, the Antarctic one. Amongst the unique things that occur on the continent, Antarctica is home to an extremely weird waterfall. The year was 1911, when an Australian geologist wondered about the so-called blood falls. He was extremely puzzled by this red stream of liquid pouring from a small hillside amongst the Antarctic ice. After years of studying, it was understood that what caused the redness was the high iron content in the water. The last piece of the puzzle came when scientists discovered that there was an underground lake with water full of oxidized iron nearby, which was what caused the blood fall to exist in the first place. The North Pole is more than Santa's fictional home. Together with the South Pole, it's home to the so-called polar vortex, a phenomenon that helps to enhance our winter experience. The polar vortex is a large area of low pressure and cold air. It's called a vortex simply because over there the air rotates counterclockwise. It sends a jet stream that makes you want to bundle up and helps induce several winter phenomena such as freezing fog. If fog is when a cloud touches the ground, what happens when it freezes? You can expect that all of the moist droplets of water that are hanging around in the air will possibly freeze when they touch the ground, meaning you really wouldn't want to be driving around in the middle of one of these things.
If you've ever been to Yellowstone National Park, you were probably mesmerized by its geysers, which spew superheated water and steam high into the air. But an even more intriguing thing actually hides underground. I'm talking about that underfoot plumbing system that makes those grand eruptions possible. About that, there's good news. Recently, researchers have succeeded in mapping the national park's hydrothermal plumbing system with the help of a giant flying magnet. As a result, scientists have managed to document all these features in stunning detail. The thing is, Yellowstone houses the world's largest hydrothermal system. It contains over 10,000 features, like geysers, mud pots, hot springs, and steam vents. They're fed by a network of underground water pathways. Those get overheated by magma flowing underground. It causes the water to rise to the surface. Now, no one actually knows much about the workings of this system, but the newly created maps might finally shed light on it. Experts explain that their knowledge of Yellowstone has a subsurface gap. That's why it's often called a mystery sandwich. Scientists know quite a lot about the features on the surface because they can observe them directly. And they know what's going on in the magmatic and tectonic system several miles below the surface. But they haven't figured out what's happening in the middle yet. So, I must tell you about that giant flying magnet used for research. It's known as SkyTem. It was attached to a helicopter and flown over Yellowstone several hundred times, scanning the ground below. The magnet is made up of an 82-foot wide charged wire loop. Its main task is to generate a strong electromagnetic field. And since different kinds of material, like water or rock, respond to this field differently, scientists managed to create a few subsurface maps for the first time ever. The mapping technique also allowed the researchers to differentiate between magma and bedrock, since they have a bit different magnetic properties. And the team got a chance to see how the magma and water interact and create those mind-blowing geological features on the surface. The team got high-resolution maps to a depth of around 500 and 2,300 feet, and low-resolution maps showing what's going on at a depth of up to 1.5 miles. At the same time, the researchers think that the hydrothermal system itself may stretch as far as 3 miles below the surface. If they're right, it means they've only mapped the top half of Yellowstone's plumbing system. Anyway, remember how I said that scientists know pretty much about the bottom part of the Yellowstone sandwich? They have such a good idea about the tectonic plates and deep fault lines because the park's frequent earthquakes provide them with a lot of opportunities to study different phenomena. In July 2021, for example, more than 1,000 earthquakes rocked the area. These days, the team of researchers knows much more about some famous features, like the Old Faithful Geyser or the Grand Prismatic Spring. They've also found out that individual hydrothermal features on the surface can actually be connected to others, which can be as far as 6 miles away from them. Another interesting discovery is that even though Yellowstone geysers and hot springs vary in size, shape, color, volatility, and chemical composition, they are mostly fed by very similar underground sources. That means that the difference between the features appears closer to the surface. Now, I'm sure you've seen the iconic image of Yellowstone with a large rainbow-colored spring, fiery orange at its edges. So what makes these hot springs so colorful? Surprisingly, these awesome hues come from microscopic creatures. The temperatures in the springs are so high, they can easily and quickly cook you. Plus, the water there is super acidic, like the liquid in a car battery. But there are certain types of heat-loving microbes that don't mind these crazy conditions. You can even say they're thriving there. So every ring of a different color is, in most cases, a ring inhabited by different bacteria. And each species is adapted to a particular temperature or pH level, which measures how acidic this or that environment is. For example, take the Grand Prismatic Spring, yes, the iconic one. Its rainbow hues likely hint at the diversity of microbes living there. So, starting from the center of the hot spring, you can see a beautiful aquamarine color there. That's where the water temperature is the highest, reaching 189 degrees Fahrenheit, because this area is right over the underground water source. The water there is too hot even for microbes. That's why what you see is mostly clear water. As for the reason for its blue color, it's the same as why the sky is blue. Sunlight hits the surface of the water and the light scatters, but the blue light scatters the most, getting reflected back to your eyes. Now, the next ring of color is yellow, all thanks to certain cyanobacteria. The temperature in this yellow ring reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit. If the conditions in the hot spring were a bit different, these bacteria would create a blue-green hue, thanks to a green pigment called chlorophyll. But since the sunlight hitting the spring is too intense, the bacteria start producing another type of pigment. It's called carotenoids. And guess what? It acts as a sunscreen for the bacteria. And since this pigment is orange, the normally green bacteria get a yellowish hue. And finally, we've got that bright orange color closer to the edges of the prismatic spring. It's a bit cooler there, around 149 degrees Fahrenheit. In this part of the spring, you can find several types of bacteria. They all produce substances that give the spring this bright orange color. And finally, right at the edges of the spring, the temperature is cooler, around 131 degrees, and a greater variety of microbes can survive there. All of them combined give the edges of the spring that red-brown hue. But scientists believe that people and their activity may have influenced the colors of Yellowstone's hydrothermal features. For example, in the past, The temperatures in the Morning Glory pool used to be much higher than they are today. That's why its color was a deep blue. But trash has started to accumulate in the pool, and some of it clogged the vent. This caused the temperatures to drop, which led to microbial growth. As a result, that pretty blue color turned into orange-yellow. As for Yellowstone's geysers, the most famous one is called Old Faithful. It got this name at the end of the 19th century because of how regular its eruptions were. This geyser is more active than the others, erupting about 20 times a day. Each of these magnificent events lasts from 1 to 5 minutes, and the fountain of steaming water can reach a height of 180 feet. Now, while talking about Yellowstone National Park, we can't but mention Yellowstone supervolcano, right? Supervolcanoes appear when huge volumes of magma are trying to escape from deep underground. Eventually, they burst through Earth's surface. Sometimes all this magma gets stuck, unable to break through the planet's crust. And then, massive pools of pressurized magma gather at a depth of several miles. The pressure keeps growing because more and more magma is trying to get to the surface. At one point, a super eruption goes off. You don't necessarily want to be around for that. Over the past 50 years, the Yellowstone caldera has risen almost 3 feet. It shouldn't alarm you, though. Experts are sure it's a natural behavior for Yellowstone. Periods of dome-shaped uplift are followed by the caldera lowering. Scientists think the supervolcano doesn't present any danger at the moment. For an eruption to happen, the magma inside has to be at least 50% molten. With Yellowstone, this number is just 5 to 15%. Even better, a recent study made the researchers believe the hotspot might be in a state of decline right now, even despite all the breathing and dome-raising activity. There have been at least 3 other super eruptions in the history of Yellowstone volcano. They happened 2.1 million, 1.3 million, and 640,000 years ago, long before video. The most recent super eruption was dubbed the Lava Creek eruption. It formed the Yellowstone caldera after spilling out 240 cubic miles of rock, dust, and volcanic ash. No thanks, I'll pass.
How do you prepare for a long trip? You probably look up the route on Google Maps or watch a walkthrough on YouTube. Or maybe you ask someone who's been there recently. But what if you're bound for a place humans have never existed? Yes, I'm talking about our next-door neighbor, the Red Planet. NASA is planning a mission to Mars in the late 2030s or early 2040s. That's too far in the future, so why start preparing now? Well, it's closer than you think. Rookie astronauts spend at least 2 years training just to go out in space. For every hour they spend in space, they need to spend 10 hours underwater on Earth. This training only applies to spacewalks and the International Space Station. So far, some 600 people have been to space, but humans have never set foot on Mars. Traveling to this planet will require a different kind of training. Is there a region of Earth that closely resembles Mars? The Apollo mission's astronauts trained in Nevada. This is where Neil Armstrong and his fellow astronauts got a sense of what the surface of the moon would feel like. But Mars is different from the moon. It has gravity and an atmosphere. In this aspect, it resembles our own planet. Just one country, to be more precise: Iceland. NASA used this island in the far north of Europe as a testing ground for its 2020 Mars mission. And no, the mission didn't involve humans landing on the Red Planet. Just a small rover looking for signs of life. But the high-tech robot still needs some practice. Let's do a little test of our own. Compare the landscapes on Mars and Iceland. Are you struggling to spot the difference? Good. That means that scientists have picked the ideal training grounds for the upcoming Mars mission. An area entirely barren and devoid of life. That's how one researcher involved in the mission described Iceland. And this description perfectly matches the conditions future astronauts will encounter on Mars. But what's so special about Iceland? There are valleys that were created by volcanic eruptions. The island is still young in geological terms. Simply put, it's still forming. Lava flows, water, volcanoes, raging winds. Iceland has it all. The country's slogan is the land of fire and ice. the island's population is just above 350,000. For comparison, the city of Cleveland in Ohio has more residents than the entire country of Iceland. But the size doesn't always matter. Remember Euro 2016? When England lost to Iceland 2-1, their players became stars overnight, but Icelanders are closer to the stars than you think. The country has a space agency. Yeah, you heard it correctly. Now, this agency actually consists of two people who are trying to promote Iceland as a terrestrial analog to Mars. In short, this means that Iceland looks a lot like the Red Planet. The local duo wants to get space scientists to choose Iceland as a training ground for future astronauts. Their biggest argument is that it's cheaper. Sending people and equipment into space is expensive. Duh! According to Elon Musk, SpaceX launches cost around $2 million. That's way less than a typical NASA launch. A large portion of space research takes place back on Earth. Antarctica is ideal for studying cold and desolate places in outer space. Hawaii is perfect for exploring lava tubes and the composition of rocks. Just imagine the logistics behind going to both of these regions at the same time. This is where Iceland comes into play. It has diverse habitats that are relatively close to each other. So what exactly will future Mars-bound astronauts do in Iceland? To answer this question, let's travel back in time. Nevada wasn't the only place NASA's astronauts visited more than half a century ago. They prepared for walking on the surface of the moon in Iceland too. Their primary objective was collecting rock samples. These can mainly be found near volcanoes and lava fields, and Iceland has plenty of those. Around 60% of the local landscape is rocky and rugged. This makes the island the size of Kentucky feel like another planet. Add that to the fact that 80% of Iceland is uninhabited, and you get the perfect playground for astronauts. And there's another similarity with Mars. In summer, it can seem as if the sun never sets in Iceland. Locals go shopping at 3 a.m. In June, for example, the night can last only 2 hours. Sounds like a perfect open-air party destination. Well, not really. Who would want to party at a freezing temperature of 42 degrees Fahrenheit? That's the average low air temperature in June. Future astronauts spent weeks in Iceland, trying to adjust to these strange conditions. This helps them prepare for the long days on Mars. This is not a figure of speech, since days on the Red Planet are longer than the ones on Earth by 40 minutes. That's not much, considering the length of days on other planets. On Jupiter, a day is over in just under 10 hours, while a day on Venus equals 243 Earth days. But let's first land on Mars and then think of other planets, shall we? Have you been doing some math in your head? If one day on Mars is 40 minutes longer than on Earth, then how long is a Martian year? Nope, I'm willing to bet your calculations aren't correct. You forgot to factor in an important detail. The planet is farther from the Sun than Earth. This means that a year on Mars lasts 687 days, nearly twice as long as a year on Earth. Sorry, future astronauts, you'll get a birthday cake once every 2 years. There's another minus to the Red Planet, literally. The planet's average temperature is minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Makes Iceland's climate feel like the tropics, huh? Despite these extreme weather conditions, scientists believe that water once flowed on Mars. And where there's water, there's life. That's why NASA scientists lowered the tiny rover in the middle of a crater that they suspected was once a lake. This is where it stands the greatest chance of finding evidence of life. What about life forms on Mars? Looks like it's not science fiction. The planet has polar caps like Earth, and that's not all. Scientists believe they've even detected snowfall on Mars. Its atmosphere is 100 times thinner than that of our planet. It isn't a breath of fresh air, but it isn't extremely inhospitable like other planets. On Venus, it rains acid, and the temperature is high enough to melt lead. And on Jupiter, there are gigantic storms that rage on for centuries. Makes you fall in love with the blue planet all over again. Even Iceland sounds fun at this point. You might even want to learn Icelandic. If you're successful, then you can even read Old Norse, the language of the Vikings. And you'll know 100 words for wind. This will come in handy as wind speeds on the island can reach up to 40 miles per hour. Out in the open, you have to hold on to a fence or a signpost to stay on your feet. Iceland's climate will make you think twice before moving there. But for astronauts preparing for another world, this place is perfect. Iceland is equally impressive underground. In fact, the island might hold the key to sustaining human life on Mars. The surface of this planet is not very hospitable. The soil is poisonous and abrasive. It can easily cut through an astronaut's suit. But underneath the ground, the living conditions are more tolerable. And Iceland has a real-life model of this potential underground dwelling: lava tubes. Long tunnels carved out by lava making its way to the surface. These maze-like corridors are perfect human habitats. And they're cost-efficient. Nature had already built them for us. Future astronauts can walk through similar lava tubes in Iceland. Who knows? One day their cautious steps might turn into giant leaps for mankind.
If there were cataclysms on Earth every 5 minutes, living conditions on our planet would be almost the same as 4.5 billion years ago. Back then, seas and oceans boiled, lightning struck everywhere, tectonic plates changed their shape, lava flowed from volcanoes, and worse, no internet. The Earth resembled a vast boiling cauldron where life was gradually being created. If it starts to boil again, this cauldron could destroy almost all life on the planet. Consecutive cataclysms. Won't hurt to pretend. Let's imagine, shall we? Good morning! You wake up in a small underground bunker. The seismic sensor indicates that a 7-point earthquake will start in a few minutes. You pack a huge waterproof backpack and go upstairs. The underground bunker is protected from seismic activity. It moves with the ground, so you're safe here. But you need to leave the shelter because supplies are low. Also, yesterday, you picked up a radio signal telling all survivors to go south immediately. The coordinates they gave aren't far from your location. You have to hurry, though, before the landscape changes again. You open the hatch and find yourself in the middle of the desert. The sun is almost invisible beyond the gray sky. The ground is shaking, but you're not afraid. There are no houses or buildings, nothing to fall on you. You keep your balance perfectly, and the earthquake doesn't knock you off your feet. It's like jumping on a trampoline. The only danger is the deep chasms in the ground, but you can easily jump over them. After such an extreme morning warm-up, you decide to have breakfast. You take a tin can out of your backpack. You have a few minutes before the next disaster, so you eat and remember how your great-grandfather told you how all this started. Before all of this, the planet was divided into territories called countries. Millions of people lived in them, and then something terrible happened. The tectonic plates started to move, and the air temperature and atmospheric pressure began to rapidly change. In one day, earthquakes destroyed entire cities. Tsunamis and floods washed away the remaining ruins. Volcanic ash blocked the passage of sunlight. Forest fires destroyed almost all vegetation, and eruptions poisoned the air. Only a few people managed to adapt to such harsh conditions, and you are a lucky duck to be one of them. As you finish your breakfast, you're distracted by another ground tremor. Time to move on. Many people travel around the world alone, as they consider it a safer way of life. Some people form small communes, but no one ever stays in one place for too long. Your whole life is in motion, but you don't panic. One of the main rules during natural disasters is to remain calm, so all survivors have steel nerves and excellent physical training. You run a few miles south and suddenly smell something strange. You put on a gas mask. The earthquake has created a limnic eruption. Natural carbon dioxide is released from the ground to the surface. You feel comfortable in a gas mask, but can't run fast while wearing it. Far up ahead, you see a green forest, a rare place that was not affected by fires. You take off the gas mask and go to the tree to take shelter in the shade from the scorching sun. This green area is rich in vegetation. Colorful flowers, strawberries, and many other berries grow here. But you're concerned. Such fertile land comes from being near volcanoes. It spews underground magma rich in vitamins and minerals, so vegetation grows. You can see a high mountain in the distance. This is the volcano. An underground push occurs again and provokes an eruption. You gather strawberries and run away from this place as far as possible. Lava pours from the volcano's mouth and makes a fire in the forest. You unhook a folding scooter with a motor from your backpack and drive away from the fiery mountain as fast as you can. The sky is covered with volcanic ash, but this is not for long. A strong wind grows with each passing second. You realize a hurricane is moving in your direction. You take out a small shovel and dig a hole in the ground. The soil is dry, but you have enough strength to dig a small ravine in a couple of minutes. You dive into the shelter and cover yourself with a protective tent. The hurricane blows the volcanic ash in different directions, and the air becomes clear again. But the fire doesn't stop. The wind spreads through the forest. You get out of the ravine and put on the gas mask again. There's a lot of smoke around, and it's unbearably hot. You know the hurricane couldn't just appear without any reason. Hurricanes are formed when warm, moist air collides with the sea surface and rises to the sky, so there's water nearby. Great, because you're thirsty and want to cool down. A loud sound erupts behind you. You turn around. A massive wave of water approaches the fire. Without panic, you take your life jacket out of your backpack, remove your gas mask, and put on a diving mask and fins. The wave blows you off your feet, but you don't drown. Over the years of survival, you have learned to swim very well. You grab a passing tree and wait patiently for the flood to be replaced by another natural disaster. For 5 minutes, you sail under a black, stormy sky that sparkles with lightning. Despite the waves, you try to row south. It's getting pretty cold. You finally see the shore, but this is not a land, but ice. A strong wind brought a cold cyclone, which caused a fast temperature change. It's like you're in Antarctica. Snow and blizzards are all around. It's freezing, but you take out a thin space blanket made from foil and walk slowly south. Under your clothes, you put crumpled paper, bubble wrap, pieces of cotton. All this also helps to warm your body. Along the way, you collect several bottles of snow to melt later. Icicles form on your face, and you can't see because of the snowstorm. Suddenly, the snow begins to squish under your feet. The ice melts and turns into water. A hot stream of air blows into your face. You find yourself on hard, dry ground, looking up at the sky, then at your watch. 5 minutes pass, and the sky is again covered with black clouds. You take a metal plate out of your backpack and cover your head with it. A few seconds later, you are hit by heavy rain and hail. Giant balls of ice knock on the metal shield, but you go calmly and even with a smile on your face. The ground becomes wet and loose from icy rocks. When the hail ends, you pull out all the heat-insulating materials from under your clothes and hide them in your backpack. Then you lay out a few long spokes of steel. The spokes are wrapped with copper wire. You connect the spokes to each other, making one long antenna. You stick it in the ground and run away. After the hail from the rain clouds, lightning strikes the ground. More precisely, it hits the lightning rod you've just built. You wait for the storm to end, then take the lightning rod apart and return it to your backpack. An intense heat begins. You drink some melted snow and break your way through the desert. The earth trembles, and your adventure begins again. Earthquakes, carbon dioxide, fires, floods, snowfall, tsunamis, lightning, and again and again and again. With the help of a compass, you continue your journey and reach your goal a few months later. You see a long antenna sticking out of the ground. This is a place mark for entering an underground city. If you live in a hot spot for earthquakes, like I do, you may have had these familiar shaking feelings. The ground trembling underneath you, pictures rattling on the walls, your neighbor's dog yapping across the yard. An earthquake is basically tectonic plates moving and grinding against each other. Rub your hands together really fast right now. Things heating up? That's energy. When these plates' energy get released, you and your neighbor's dog feel it on land. Yes, we're all surfing on giant pieces of land floating on hot liquid rock. You're surfing right now while watching this video. Sometimes one slides under another, like reaching in between the couch cushions for that remote that slipped down there. If you're wearing long sleeves, they get rolled up on your arm like a snake shedding its skin. When plate tectonics do this, mountains form. But let's zoom out from your bedroom. Even further. Keep going. There. Earth, the third planet from the Sun, covered in mountains, canyons, and those familiar continents with oceans stretching between and all around them. But our planet used to have just one single supercontinent, Pangaea, where all the land masses were hugging each other and enjoying the sweet life surrounded by one massive superocean. Africa and Australia were neighbors. The Americas and Asia popped up for a howdy neighbor. But fast forward about 300 million years, and here we are. And there you are, hanging 10 on molten rock as the ground beneath you forms mountains, ridges, volcanoes, and earthquakes. Sounds hardcore, but you don't feel like you're moving, do you? You also don't feel like your body is going highway speeds when you ride in a car. That's physics, and it's a funny thing. Right now, the plate under you is only moving a couple of inches a year, up to 4 when things get super speedy. Per day, that comes to half the width of a strand of hair. So let's speed things up a bit, say 300 feet a day. And me too.
You're sitting in your room enjoying a delicious cup of hot cocoa, scrolling the feed and watching some videos. As you set the mug on the nightstand, you begin to feel dizzy, like the room is spinning. You check your drink and see the liquid inside is swaying like crazy. Uh-oh, now you're swaying. You manage to get up but can't keep your balance. Everything topples over like a tornado in the room. You duck underneath your bed and cover your head. There's a power outage, and now you can't see anything.
There are 2 things to keep in mind when it comes to earthquakes: magnitude and intensity. Magnitude is the size of the quake. It's just one constant number. Intensity is how much shaking it causes. That number can be different depending on where you're measuring from. The most powerful earthquake ever was in Chile in 1960. Its magnitude measured 9.5 on the Richter scale. Above 7 is considered severe. The quake caused tsunamis all the way to Japan, Hawaii, the Philippines, and even New Zealand. The damage cost millions of dollars in repairs.
In the dark, you can still feel the ground shaking below you. And since the crust cut across 300 feet today, the ground rips open. The landscape where you used to bike around is now sprouting deep earth rocks and minerals. The buildings all around begin to collapse, but luckily, you manage to sneak off and escape into an open space. There isn't any service on your phone either. The cell towers toppled over during the quake, but the ground is still shaking. And with the plates moving so fast, the Earth's interior begins to show its true colors. And that color is red, red for red hot. You can see the mantle at this point. The Earth, like an onion, is revealing its layers. With magma flowing right in front of you, you'd think you're in a disaster movie. Suddenly, you get a whiff of salty sea air, and now you're standing on the beach. But wait a minute, you don't live by the coast. If an earthquake's strength is measured by magnitude and intensity, this one's a doozy. It probably originated out in the ocean and stretched all the way inland where you are. It caused a tidal wave so big, the coast just came to your landlocked town. Waves of ocean water are gathering near the edges of the city. Farms and rivers are all gone with a single tidal wave. The land that was good for agriculture is no more. And as the ground below you keeps on cutting, it lets in some ocean water between the gaps. It collides with the magma that's rising. Steam shoots up from the ground, and the Earth looks like a giant tea kettle. With the power out and no cell signals, there's no way of communicating with anyone. And that's just the thing with earthquakes. They can show up with hardly any warning.
Unlike earthquakes, tornadoes, and typhoons, with those, we can predict their path and intensity. We can prepare. Even volcanic eruptions give people enough time to evacuate and reach safe ground. But earthquakes are just in a league of their own.
And with all the buildings collapsing around you, you'd be seeing a smokescreen of dust and debris. The air would be unbreathable. Better grab a gas mask. Off in the distance are the mountains you've always enjoyed. You trekked along the trails every other weekend and had some fantastic camping trips along the river. But the earthquake drags across the center of the mountain and creates enough pressure to cut it. Trees start falling over. The mountain becomes a pile of rock and dust. It's not over yet. The shaking ground makes large pieces of land and rock slide down and head towards the town. Some landslides are so massive, they're enough to wipe out entire villages in remote areas. Many come after heavy rain, others come completely unexpected. With the ground opening beneath you, many of the objects on land get swallowed into the pit. Cars, trees, buildings, statues, you name it. You're able to find safe ground, but you can't really know if it's all that safe. All this is happening in your town and places across the globe. But it's about to get even more global.
Plate tectonics are crucial for life on Earth. One of their main duties in a thankless job was maintaining the planet's comfortable, livable temperature. Without land masses floating around on a layer of liquid rock, there'd be no life on the liveliest planet we know so far. A couple of billion years ago, Earth was just a little ice ball. This was because the sun, much younger back then, was colder than it is today. You'd think the oceans would be frozen and good enough to skate from the Atlantic to the Pacific, but they weren't. And it's all because scientists believe the shifting plates underneath kept the oceans warm and cozy. They did that by creating underwater volcanoes. Besides lava and many gases, they spewed carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which trapped the heat on Earth. As the sun gradually got hotter, rainfall was able to drag the carbon dioxide back to the ground and into the mantle. And this cycle was able to help the Earth maintain its temperature to host us. Gee, how thoughtful. Earth is so unique because of these plate tectonics. No other planet in the solar system can brag of the same, except for Jupiter's frozen moon Europa. It's shown evidence of moving plate tectonics within the core. And even though Venus and Mars have hot interiors, there hasn't been any sign of such activity.
As the ground continues to cut across the land, everything in sight has now descended underground. If the plates were to move 300 feet a day for a year, the entire planet's landscape would go through a total makeover. A bad one. Life as we know would cease to exist, except for maybe microscopic bacteria and a few insects that can survive such harsh conditions. The polar ice caps wouldn't hold any more ice, and volcanoes would continuously be erupting. The planet would just end up looking like a hot fireball of destruction, and maybe even burn up entirely.
Luckily, this is purely a hypothetical thought experiment. So, sit back, relax, and don't worry about the ground moving under your feet. It's taking its sweet time at a safe pace.
Woohoo!
This is John. John seems to attract all kinds of bad weather and natural disasters wherever he goes. See for yourself. One day, John notices his dog is restless. The pooch keeps scratching the entrance door and wandering around the house. He even tries to hide in the corner, howling and barking. When some mugs start to clink in your cupboard, John realizes what it means. The noise is produced by foreshocks, mini earthquakes leading up to the main event. Earthquakes often happen in clusters. After a few weak quakes, a much bigger one is likely to be on the way. Sometime before the disaster strikes, people might notice bizarre blue lights. Some of them seem to be coming out of the ground. Others are hovering in the air. These are earthquake lights. They may appear days or mere seconds before the ground starts shaking. Now, John is walking along the ocean shore. Suddenly, he sees the water retreat from the beach. Really, really fast. Uh-oh. John, run away as quickly as you can and find some high ground. A tsunami is coming. And your life might depend on how fast you react. If John spots a bizarre and unexpected rise in sea level, it can be another sign of an approaching tsunami. This happens in 40% of cases. The incoming water is the first tsunami wave. The second one, way larger, will come in about 10 minutes. John can also notice seawater bubbling, swirling, and creating bizarre patterns. It's another sure sign a tsunami is near. John feels there's something strange about the sun. Through his special super dark sunglasses, he sees that there's some uneven flares around the star's contour. If these bizarre rays are accompanied by auroras all over the world, they're a sign of a solar storm. Such storms are usually caused by disturbances in the sun's magnetic field. In this case, the bursts of gas and radiation on the surface of the sun get so massive and powerful that they can even reach our planet. Luckily, solar storms aren't really dangerous for people, but they can mess with electricity and even cause blackouts. The sky over John's head is darkening and turning ominously green. Something hits him on the forehead. Ouch! He picks up the offending object. It's a hailstone, but it's not that cold outside, and it's not raining. Soon, he hears some noise. It's approaching rapidly and turns into a loud roar. It sounds as if a freight train is moving towards him, but it's not a train. It's a tornado. The funnel isn't visible behind a cloud of debris, but John can't mistake this rotating column of air for anything else. Are you on the road, John? Then get as far away from your car as you can. Fast! Find a ditch, lie down in it, and cover your head. Oh, you're inside? Then get away from the windows and hide underground if possible. And please, John, be very careful if you spot some conically shaped clouds. Those mean severe storms. And if you notice that such a cloud starts spinning around, immediately search for shelter. The cloud is transitioning into a tornado right in front of your eyes. On the bright side, John should only worry about warm conical clouds. Cold ones are totally harmless. The only problem is to figure out the temperature of the cloud he sees. Duh! Ah, look, John just spotted some weirdly shaped trees. They look like the letter J and grow on a slope. It means the ground under John's feet is likely to be unstable. If he keeps wandering around, it can cause a bad landslide. Square waves appear when two different wave patterns crash into each other. This phenomenon does look kinda awesome. No, don't go into the water, John. Keep watching it from the shore. Cross currents in that spot can easily pull even a skilled swimmer under the surface. John keeps walking along the shore. At one point, he sees wild, choppy waves carrying ocean debris and seaweed. This time, he stays out of the water. He knows it can be a sign of a strong rip current. It can carry a swimmer far away into the ocean. How about a walk in the park? John likes this idea. The sun is shining and the sky is so blue and beautiful. Suddenly, he spots a rapidly growing vertical cloud. At first, it looks bright white. But as it approaches, alarmingly fast, it becomes dense and inky. The sky is darkening. It's getting windy. That's when the guy notices that his hair stands on end. It's his cue that he's about to get hit by lightning. At this very moment, positive charges are rising through his body. They're reaching towards the negatively charged part of the storm. If he doesn't react fast, these charges will meet. There's nowhere to hide, so John should crouch down and try to make himself smaller than the objects around him. Oh no, John, don't lie down on the ground. It may be damp and thus a great conductor of electricity. There are other signs that scream danger during a lightning storm. John's palms may begin to sweat. He might hear bizarre crackling and buzzing sounds coming from metal objects nearby. His skin can start tingling. There might be a strange metallic taste in his mouth. Plus, John is likely to smell chlorine. That's how ozone smells. Electrical charges split the molecules of nitrogen and oxygen, which are the main gases making up the atmosphere, into separate atoms. When these atoms come together again, some of them produce molecules made up of 3 oxygen atoms. That's ozone. We can smell it during a thunderstorm because downdrafts bring this gas from high altitudes to your level. Some bugs can feel a storm coming. They get ready for a natural disaster by freezing. So, when John notices that insects around him look drowsy, he knows to get ready. Oh, and bees can predict heavy rainstorms. These critters begin to work much harder the day before it starts raining. While walking next to the river during a period of heavy rains, John hears a roaring sound. He feels paralyzed with fear. It's likely to be a flash flood moving in his direction. Indeed, he soon sees debris coming down with the flow. The water is rapidly changing its color, becoming muddier and darker. Flash floods are very, very dangerous. Take care of your safety immediately, John. Another day, John sees a spectacular wall cloud. It seems to be stretching for up to 5 miles. In the best case scenario, it's just a severe storm coming. But if the wall cloud begins to move in a circle, it's a sure sign of a tornado. John is walking across a snowfield in the mountains, listening to the sounds the ice under his feet makes. The noise is kinda hollow. Quickly check whether there are cracks around your footprints, John. If so, the chances are an avalanche is about to happen. Soon, John sees an avalanche moving in his direction. He does his best to get off the slope. In most cases, he could probably outrun it by heading downhill and then veering sideways, but not this time. he realizes he doesn't have enough time and heads for the nearest tree. If John keeps holding on to it really tightly, the avalanche might not pull him along. But if this doesn't work, he should try to swim up to the snow's surface while the avalanche is still moving. On a pretty nice summer evening, John notices leaves with soft stems droop all of a sudden. It might be because of an upcoming storm. Right before extreme weather arrives, the air usually becomes more humid. Leaves also get damp and heavy, and the wind easily flips them over. John lives in a pretty old house and is used to having cracks in the interior walls, but one day, he notices that some of them have widened. And look, there are a few new ones. It's an alarm bell. He lives in an area with loads of limestone, so new cracks can mean a sinkhole is about to open next to his house. John is hurrying home, trying not to waste time admiring shelf clouds. They look like something from a sci-fi movie. They form when warm and moist air gets caught in a thunderstorm updraft, and these ominous clouds most often mean a storm is coming.
Quaijan volcano in Indonesia is not your ordinary lava-belching mountain. Instead of producing black smoke and red lava, as most volcanoes do, this eccentric guy lets out a blue flame and electric blue lava. This phenomenon occurs because the volcano contains some of the highest levels of sulfur in the world, and when the sulfuric gases interact with scorching air and get lit by the molten lava, they start to turn blue. Unfortunately, you can see this mesmerizing sight only at night, but you can smell it all day long. By the way, the world's largest acid lake is also located inside this crater. The Dead Sea has a high concentration of salt and minerals compared to other seas, even though it's technically a lake. Swimming is almost impossible, but people go there for the natural chemicals for the body. Floating on the surface is a great way to relax. This ancient body of water got its name because no macroscopic organisms can live there since it's 9.6 times saltier than oceans. Only a few bacteria and fungi can be found enjoying the salt. It's also Earth's lowest elevation on land at 1,400 feet below sea level. An underground crystal cave exists in Mexico, and it looks like some interstellar world. It's roughly 1,000 feet beneath the surface, with each spike measuring up to 35 feet in length and weighing up to 55 tons. These are some of the largest crystals in the world. Luscantire Beach is an endless strand of white sand dunes and azure water. But don't let the tropical vibes fool you. It's located in Scotland. That's why it mostly looks like this during May and June only. In December, the place gets only an average of 1 hour of sunshine per day, making it way more dramatic and monochrome. The Georgia Guidestones is a collection of giant stones in a star pattern. It has inscriptions in 8 languages, including Hindi, Chinese, and Swahili. It also has an astronomical calendar finished in 1980 and was built to last centuries. No one knows who built it or why. All the way over in sunny California is Sequoia National Park, home to the giant forest. It's been around for thousands of years. More than 8,000 of these colossal trees rule the land, including 10 of the largest living plants in the world. The General Sherman sequoia is estimated to be up to 2,700 years old and is recognized as the world's largest known living tree by volume. The famous stone heads of Easter Island have been around for hundreds of years. No one knows exactly why they were built. Some scientists think that local people believed the statues would make the soil more fertile. Soil analysis proved the heads did their job well. It's the best agricultural spot on the island. The chemical composition of the ancient hot springs in Pamukkale, Turkey, makes the water pouring over the edge look magical. They're not only good for cleansing your body, but the mind too. All the way in Saudi Arabia is a rock sliced perfectly in the middle with 2 pieces sitting parallel. What makes Al Nasla so unique is that it wasn't artificially done, but is a result of nature's work over the years. Now, this glacier may look like someone dropped tons of red paint in the middle of Antarctica, but it's actually the natural color. Blood falls is a result of extreme salted water mixed with iron oxide, giving out this eerie vibe in the middle of nowhere. In early May 2018, New England observed one of the scariest and most dangerous phenomena ever, a super long-track tornado. The frightening natural phenomenon started not far from Charleston, New Hampshire, and traveled toward the town of Webster in Merrimack County. It took the tornado 33 minutes to cover 36 miles and become the third on the list of the longest track tornadoes in New England. In the Philippines, you can swim in some of the most crystal-clear waters and discover an underwater world below you in the province of Palawan. The municipality of Coron has white sandy beaches with many small boats riding through the many amazing sceneries. Tristan da Cunha is a small volcanic archipelago in the Atlantic, with the only neighboring cities of Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Cape Town, South Africa. It takes 7 days by ship to get to this unique place. If you want to escape from the rest of the world, staying with the 280 locals will make you feel like you're away from everything. During the first week of January 2018, unusually cold weather in the northeast United States froze the Atlantic Ocean in North Falmouth, Massachusetts. What's more, the ocean was frozen so thoroughly that people were walking on the waves. Now, that's obviously something you don't see every day. Red sand is what makes this beach unique and why tourists flock to Tianjin, China. A red-colored plant called a sueda salsa dwells in the saltwater. The whole beach is covered in red, with only the top layer of the sea visible. If there ever was a thing that said, "I defy gravity" out loud, it's the stone of Tabasco in Argentina. The huge 300-ton boulder stands precariously on the edge of a cliff and rocks a little bit from side to side in the wind. People even checked it by putting glass bottles under one of its edges. They exploded with another movement of the rock. Unfortunately today, you can't see this wonder of nature as it was a century ago. In 1912, the boulder suddenly dropped from its perch, which it had occupied for literally hundreds of years. The people of the nearby town of Tandil were so sad about this event that 95 years later, in 2007, they decided to restore the stone. They made a plastic replica of the rock and put it on the same spot and even in the same position. So, even today, coming by Tandil, you can see its famous balancing boulder. More of a symbol now, of course, because it's no longer rocking and only weighs 9 tons, but instantly recognizable nonetheless. Socotra is an alien-like island off the coast of Yemen in the Indian Ocean with one of the most unique trees ever seen. It's called the dragon tree, and it can only be found on this amazing island. In 2008, it was labeled as a World Heritage Site. If you ever see a tight burning column of air, don't panic, it's not the end of the world. The creepy combination of whirlwind sounds and scorching inferno means that you have crossed paths with a fire tornado, also known as fire twister or fire whirl. This dangerous phenomenon occurs mostly during wildfires. These fires create a big area of super hot air just above the ground. When this scorching air gets mixed with the cooler air higher up, it results in a whirlwind that churns up burning debris and flames. The most powerful firenadoes can stretch hundreds of feet into the air. The House of Mystery in Gold Hill, Oregon, amazes its visitors with gravity-defying effects. You can't stand straight there, always leaning to the side and having to hold on to something for balance. Balls roll upwards. There's also a broom that stands perfectly still wherever you put it, unlike virtually everything else in the shack. The local Native American tribes called this place the Forbidden Ground, even before the house was built there, and they avoid approaching it. The owners of the shack, though, decided to turn it into an attraction, and they succeeded. They created an atmosphere of mystery around the place, and spread the news about it in newspapers and later on the internet, and voila! A perfect anomaly is made. In fact, it's no more than a curiosity. A human-made optical illusion that tricks your eyes and other senses. Now, if you travel to the Philippines, Indonesia, or Papua New Guinea, you'll have a chance to see some of the most unusual and cheerful trees in the world. The trunk of the rainbow eucalyptus looks as if it had been painted orange, green, red, purple, yellow, brown, blue, hey, you name it. Some trees are so bright that they seem artificial. The rainbow eucalyptus regularly sheds strips of bark, which reveals a bright green layer underneath. A bit later, this green layer gradually changes its color. And since the shedding happens at a different time in different places on the trunk, the tree starts to look multicolored and very attractive. Yemen is home to the oldest skyscrapers in the world and the oldest metropolis. The ancient city of Shibam is considered to be the Manhattan of the desert due to the collection of mud buildings popping out of the desert floor. It used to be a caravan stop during ancient times. You're hiking in the wilderness, looking for a safe spot to set up camp. All you can hear are leaves and branches crackling under your footsteps. Some squirrels are running up a tree over there, but suddenly, something unexpected happens. You notice something weird in the distance in between the trees. It kind of looks like a concrete structure of some kind. Weird. At this point, you're at least 20 miles deep into the woods, and there are no nearby towns or villages, as far as you know. So you decide to go off the trail with your friends to get a closer look. But as you get nearer, you realize that it's leading to nowhere. What's it doing here in the middle of literally nowhere? And it doesn't even lead to anything. You put on your Sherlock Holmes cap and investigate. So, maybe there used to be an old house or mansion here that collapsed over the years, and the only thing left is a staircase? But, weirdly enough, after circling the bizarre structure, you realize there's no trace of any ruins or even foundations. It's like someone just sliced a staircase off their house, cake style, and plopped it here for no reason. Okay? You and your friends aren't really into getting a whole lot closer. Something feels wrong. The longer you look at this weird structure, the more you feel a super creepy presence. Something tells you you should probably leave the area as fast as possible. As weird as this sounds, discoveries of random staircases, illogically found in the woods, are surprisingly common. Some are made of wood, others of brick or stone. Some look ancient, while others look like they were finished yesterday. The one thing they all have in common, they all lead to absolutely nowhere, and they're all found in super mysterious locations. One of the most famous ones is in Chesterfield, New Hampshire. A long, medieval-looking staircase made of stones with Roman arches in the middle of the woods. It's believed to have been part of Madame Antoinette Sherry's castle. She was a big singer back in Paris. The castle dates back about 100 years, and it was later discovered again in 1962. This time, there was nothing but a staircase. Another mysterious ancient staircase dates back to 9,000 years ago. It's in a forest in Italy. It looks like a series of stairs that lead to a tiny platform at the top. Now, why go through all the trouble of building the thing if it leads to nowhere? Well, some scientists think it could have been some sort of ritual tower, but your guess is as good as theirs. There's an anomaly in the Indian Ocean known as the Indian Ocean Geoid Low, or IOGL. It produces the largest distorting natural gravitational force in the world. Heavy mineral deposits, many deep-sea trenches, and magma reservoirs disturb the magnetic field in this area. Earth's gravity changes in different places around the planet. It allows researchers to look for patterns and figure out what's happening beneath the surface. Higher gravity fields usually mean denser materials below, and vice versa. Some scientists believe that the anomaly might be a dent in the planet's mantle that is working its way up to the crust. The Niihau Island actually rejects the fruits of today's advancements. There are no cars in sight since the locals get around on foot or by bicycles. No wonder their legs have great definition. They thrive without running water, internet, or shops. The only school on the entire island is powered by solar energy with a backup generator. And what's awesome is that it's the only school in the state that's powered by the sun. Being a resident of the island, the local explains some ground rules the permanent residents must abide by. If they do break these rules, they can be evicted. Now, not far from Bangkok, in northeastern Thailand, there's a 75-million-year-old rock formation. These rocks look like three whales swimming together. The beautiful design created by nature became known as Three Whales Rock. Millions of years ago, this area was just a desert, but the land was changing. Gradually, sandstone got pulled apart by the movements of tectonic plates and erosion. That's how these spectacular formations were created. If you decide to explore the system of trails around Three Whales Rock, you'll find waterfalls and an abundance of fauna and flora there. Located on Gamal and Gaiden peninsulas, these expansive pit holes were discovered in 2014. They seem to be still changing and evolving. The pits grow wider and people find them more often. Of course, there's no shortage of theories about how they appeared. Suggestions range from meteorite impacts to the activity of other civilizations. But the most common explanation is that methane gas reacted to water molecules after the planet's permafrost started to melt. This resulted in bubbles of methane bursting through the ice. The craters could be thousands of years old, but nobody knows for sure. You're driving to the state of New Mexico, to the small town of Taos. 2% of the locals hear a strange buzzing in the air every day. Some residents believe the sound is somehow connected with technologies used by guests from other galaxies. Also, there is a theory that something sinister lives in the town. They say Taos is cursed. An evil spirit or a phantom punishes people for something their ancestors did in the past. Scientists still can't explain the nature of this sound. Another theory says it's caused by unusual acoustics of the location, while others think the buzzing is a hallucination. Some can hear it because everybody talks about something, and our minds create an illusion of the sound that doesn't really exist. The sound isn't the same for everyone either. For some, it's a low hum. For others, it's more of a buzzing sound. But this is not the only place where you can hear the strange noises. It's called the hum, and people worldwide claim to have heard it. Some dwellers of a small village in Scotland describe it as a low, thick hum, while some residents of Florida heard a similar sound too. It's not exactly known where this phenomenon appeared, but the first time the media started talking about it was in the 1970s in England. Also, there are written records of a mysterious buzzing dating back almost 200 years. According to some estimates, only about 2% of people on the planet can hear the hum. Perhaps their ears pick up some low-frequency waves, or the reason is something else entirely. Maybe, just maybe, they hear humming because the person doing it doesn't know the words to the song. Yeah, that joke is also 200 years old. A volcano in Indonesia spews bright blue lava and produces electric blue and purple flames. This phenomenon occurs because the volcano has some of the highest levels of sulfur in the world. You can also know you're near it by its foul stench. But I digress. And when sulfuric gases interact with scorching hot air and get lit by the molten lava, they turn blue. You can also find the world's largest acid lake inside this crater. Yup, it's a real stinker. Underwater rivers and lakes are called brine pools for a reason. High salinity makes the water in them denser than the seawater around. That's why it sinks to the bottom, forming rivers and lakes. Those have waves of their own, and these waves can sometimes lap up against the shorelines. If you went down there in a submarine, it would easily float on the surface of a brine pool. But without a submarine, swimming in such a lake would be too risky. They contain too much toxic methane and hydrogen sulfide. Yeah, I'd pass on that too. But hey, be my guest. Cave of Crystals in Mexico is home to the world's most unique crystal formations. Thanks to super rare conditions in the cave, crystals there grow to unbelievable sizes. The air inside is incredibly humid. The water contains tons of minerals that boost the growth of the milky white giants. Some of them are longer than telephone poles. Cylindrical snow donuts occur when a wind gust starts to roll some snow across a snowy area, as if making a snowball. If it was a real thing, it would eventually become too heavy for the wind to move. But a snow donut's center is hollowed out. This happens because its inner layer is too thin and is blown away when the donut is formed. This makes the thing lighter than a snowball. That's also why it rolls further. Unfortunately, snow donuts are rare because they need very precise conditions to appear. The Danakil Depression in Ethiopia is probably one of the most bizarre-looking places you'll ever see. It's dotted with neon-colored hot springs, lava pools, and vast salt flats. You've got to be especially careful there. Toxic gases are swirling over hydrothermal fields, and many pools are super acidic. So, don't go swimming. Until at least 30 minutes after lunch. Just kidding. And finally, there's nothing mysterious about 28,000 rubber ducks found in the sea in 1992. That's when a ship transporting bath toys got lost in the ocean while traveling from Hong Kong to the U.S. Some of these ducks are still floating in the ocean several decades later. They've been spotted in South America, Alaska, Hawaii, and even Australia. And they make bath time lots of fun. Ooh, rubber ducky.
The latest super eruption of Yellowstone occurred 640,000 years ago, and it was long before Homo sapiens saw the light of day. But we were around during another, no less devastating natural disaster. This super eruption took place on the island of Sumatra around 74,000 years ago. That's when an erupting supervolcano wreaked havoc on huge territories, sending up plumes of debris and ash that spread for thousands of miles and caused temperatures on the planet to plummet. The effects of this super eruption were visible as far away as southern Africa. Experts believe they could have impacted early humans there. By the time the volcano erupted, our ancestors had already been using stone tools and had likely known how to produce yarn. And some specialists even think that the Toba super eruption was so powerful it could push our ancestors to the brink of extinction. They claim that Toba might be the largest volcanic eruption to occur on Earth within the last 2 million years. The eruption disgorged so much pyroclastic rock it would be enough to cover the entire United States to the depth of a one-story house. About a third of that deposit piled up on northern Sumatra, while a lot more ended up beneath the floor of the Indian Ocean. The super eruption left an elliptical crater lake around 60 miles long. The caldera is so large it's hard to feel that you're indeed in a volcano. Pumice deposits from the eruption remain in the canyon walls and go deep below the ground. There aren't many arguments about the amount of pumice and ash involved in this disaster. At the same time, experts aren't sure how much sulfur ended up in the atmosphere. Even some sulfur layers in the polar ice could be potential candidates. But so far, scientists haven't found any connection between them and Toba. But let's get back to the dramatic impact the super eruption had on early humans. It turns out some not only survived but even thrived after this natural catastrophe, at least judging by the artifacts they made during and after the eruption. The disaster might not have posed a serious threat to those of our ancestors who took refuge along the coast. Genetic evidence hints that modern humans descend from a few thousand people that ventured out of Africa around 60,000 years ago. Why just a few thousand? According to some experts, the rest of our ancestors could have been devastated by the Toba eruption. After all, the supervolcano spewed out 1,000 cubic miles of dust and rock in a flash, leaving a scar in the ground that was dozens of miles wide. All that dust and sulfur Toba sent into the atmosphere potentially cooled the surface of our planet, which led to the appearance of glaciers and the lowering of Earth's sea levels. And since Toba might have had an important role in shaping humankind, scientists have been working hard trying to understand precisely how early humans reacted to this disaster. In 2011, several researchers found an enigmatic soil sample in South Africa's Pinnacle Point, an archaeological site overlooking the Indian Ocean. This sample contained some volcanic ash. After examining the layer, they found more than 400,000 artifacts left by early humans. Those ranged from heat-treated stone tools to signs of fire and animal bones. Based on this finding, the team suggested that early humans on the South African coast thrived after the eruption living in that area for thousands of years and improving their tools. The region might have served as a refuge during and after the Toba eruption. A 2009 study suggested that the eruption could have lowered global temperatures by 14 degrees Fahrenheit. It would have made survival tough elsewhere in Africa. If there had been a volcanic winter, it wouldn't have been as cold along the coastline. On the other hand, newer studies claim that Toba spewed out so much sulfur into the atmosphere that the resulting aerosols could have stuck together, which would have limited their cooling effect in the long term. In other words, right after the eruption, temperatures would have plummeted, but only in some regions. And after 3 years or so, the effects of the eruptions would have calmed down altogether, becoming not dangerous to humans. Well, apparently, more research is needed. Meanwhile, let's figure out if we should watch out for any volcanoes these days. Last year, thousands of small earthquakes shook the ground near Iceland's Svartsengi geothermal power plant. Magma rose to the surface there, and now it has opened wide fractures slicing through the small town of Grindavik. The ground there is still swelling, and an eruption might happen with little notice. But of course, that's not all. Over the planet, 45 other volcanoes keep rumbling. For example, Italy's Vesuvius, that infamous thing that finished the city of Pompeii in 79 CE. Over the last 17,000 years, the volcano has experienced 8 explosive eruptions, followed by powerful pyroclastic flows, dense masses of super hot ash, lava fragments, and gases flowing at high speeds. The volcano's last eruption happened in 1944. Mount Rainier is one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the USA. Its high elevation, chemical composition, and proximity to Washington's Seattle and Tacoma suburbs, and the volcano's ability to produce massive pyroclastic flows make Mount Rainier a threat to consider. The heat from this volcano could potentially melt the ice and snow covering it, leading to rapid downstream flows of debris, mud, and rocks. The Novarupta volcano in Alaska's Katmai National Park and Reserve formed in a 1912 eruption, which was the world's largest in the 20th century. The volcano sent almost 7 cubic miles of ash and debris into the air. It also produced such a powerful ash flow that it created the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. Mount Pinatubo is located in a populated region in the Philippines. It became notorious after a 1991 massive eruption, which was the second largest eruption of the 20th century. More than 700 people lost their lives during that natural disaster. Today, more than 21 million people live within 62 miles of Pinatubo. Mount Agun, a continuously erupting volcano in Indonesia, had its last major eruption in 1963. It was one of the most tragic eruptions in the country's history. It lasted for 11 months, producing ashfall and pyroclastic flows that led to the loss of more than 1,000 lives and serious property damage. People saw ash plumes above the volcano throughout 2018, following the eruption in November 2017. Japan's Mount Fuji hasn't erupted since 1707. That year, a massive earthquake likely set it off. In 2014, experts warned that Fuji could be at risk of another eruption following the 9-magnitude earthquake that shook Japan in 2011. Experts believed the earthquake had raised pressure below Fuji. The eruption in 1707 sent so much ash and debris into the air that all this mass even reached Tokyo. Should Fuji erupt again, it would affect more than 25 million people in the surrounding areas. The eruption of Washington's Mount St. Helens in 1980 was one of the most destructive volcanic events in U.S. history. 57 people, as well as thousands of animals, lost their lives during that natural disaster. The eruption also destroyed around 200 square miles of forest. Experts think that Mount St. Helens' history of massive eruptions means that future catastrophes are bound to happen. The next explosive eruption might send large amounts of ash all over the Pacific Northwest. No wonder the volcano is under close monitoring. One of Indonesia's most active volcanoes, Mount Merapi, has been erupting for centuries. NASA claims that the biggest risk of this volcano is pyroclastic flows, which can spread over vast areas and harm loads of people. For the last time, Merapi erupted in January 2024, sending plumes of smoke into the air. These days, more than 24 million people live in the area surrounding this volcano.
Rocks rolling down the slopes of a rumbling volcano, pushing other bigger rocks on their way, and eventually tumbling down into the ocean in a humongous cascade, causing a wave the height of which the world's never seen before. This is what might happen if the Helena slump of the Hawaiian Big Island falls off into the water. The Kilauea volcano is far from dormant. The latest eruption occurred in 2018. Its eruptions are usually accompanied by earthquakes of different magnitudes, and with each quake, the magma rocks on the slopes of the volcano shift down. These rock formations are called slumps, and the Helena slump is the most notorious of them all. In 1868, the shift of this slump caused a tidal wave rising as tall as 60 feet. But what's most troubling is that some 110,000 years ago, a landslide here led to one of the most powerful earthquakes ever, which in turn led to a mega tsunami of over 1,000 feet in height. Scientists are worried that such an event may repeat in the future. If that happens, the wave might engulf the whole of Hawaii and easily reach both North and South American coasts. Geologists are quick to reassure, though, that a landslide like this is unlikely to occur anytime soon. It's just too early for that. But when it finally does, the consequences will be catastrophic. Have a nice day! Yellowstone National Park in the western USA is world famous for its dazzling views, and especially the colorful Grand Prismatic Spring at its very heart. But we should all stay aware that Yellowstone is, first and foremost, an enormous caldera, basically a slumbering supervolcano. The difference between a regular volcano, like Kilauea from earlier, and a supervolcano is that the latter is thousands of times more powerful. Imagine an eruption spewing tons of huge rock and rivers of hot lava, pumping out clouds of ash that make countries stop air travel for weeks. And now multiply all of this by 1,000. This is what a Yellowstone eruption would look like. At first, a huge area in the middle of the national park would shake, crumble, and then blast upwards in a megaton explosion. Lava flows and magma rocks would cover the area of about 40 square miles, roughly half of Washington, D.C. But the greatest danger is the volcanic ash. The ashen plume would rise miles above and get carried by the wind in every direction. Since the eruption would be far from ordinary, the spread and damage would also be much greater than usual. The ash is thick and heavy, so it would cover a vast area in a blanket, destroying crops and even buildings. Worse still, it would spread in the air and block out the sun, leading to a drastic drop in temperature and an artificial winter. Even regular volcanoes can lower temperatures worldwide by a few degrees. A supervolcano may potentially cause a new ice age. Luckily, the chances of Yellowstone supervolcano erupting in the near future, or at all, are extremely low. There have been only 3 of those in the history of Earth, and there's no evidence such a disaster should repeat. Scientists estimate the probability at 0.00014%, which is lower than the chances of an asteroid wiping us all out. Speaking of which, if dinosaurs could talk, and were at least still alive for that matter, they'd tell you that asteroid threat is as real as it gets. Scientists at NASA say they've tracked 90% of all near-Earth asteroids of significant size, and none of them are a matter of any concern. But there are still the other 10% in the great unknown. What's more, asteroids can change their line of flight because of the pull of other celestial bodies and eventually turn our way. Lucky us! Now, if an asteroid big enough, like a mile across, hits the Earth, it will first cause an explosion powerful enough to erase a dozen big cities in a matter of seconds. Then the impact will raise a cloud of dust and debris that will block out the sun, just like the ash cloud from a volcano, and cause a centuries-long winter on the whole planet. But even if it falls into the ocean, which is more likely, a resulting wave will rise several miles high, washing coastal cities off the face of the planet. But at least there won't be a new ice age. Although scientists are pretty sure there's no such threat in the near future, it can't be ruled out completely, and humanity needs at least 5 years to prepare for this event. If a big near-Earth asteroid suddenly changes its course and turns right toward our planet, we won't stand a chance against it. Disaster movie, anyone? A much more probable calamity, though, rests right beneath our feet. It's the San Andreas Fault in California. The fault has been ready for rupture for years now, and scientists estimate that an earthquake along this line is likely to occur in the next 3 decades. And when it happens, it won't be nice. They expect a magnitude of 8.0, which is comparable to some of the most devastating quakes in history. It's all the more dangerous since California is home to some of the most populated cities in the western U.S., including Los Angeles and San Francisco. High-rise buildings are common there, and they're particularly vulnerable against underground shakes. The San Andreas earthquake might cause a whole lot of damage both to cities and countryside. In the worst-case scenario, the ground might break apart, destroying buildings, farms, and changing the landscape altogether. Still, scientists believe that the probability of such a quake is only 7% for the next 30 years. So, there's a rather big chance, 93%, that we'll never see that in our lifetime. Yet, there's another earthquake hazard not so far away from the previous one: the megathrust in Chile. The country sits right above the subduction zone, an area where 2 tectonic plates meet and go one beneath the other. At the place of their meeting, stress has accumulated because of their continuous movement, and once that strain is too much, a major earthquake occurs. Chile has experienced a lot of quakes in the recent years, and scientists are worried those might be preparing the area for a really big one. They believe a great earthquake is due to happen before the end of the century, and it might be devastating to the coastal area. Even smaller quakes caused tsunamis that flooded the west coast, and a huge one like that is likely to raise a wave of incredible height. On the bright side, Chile now knows to prepare in advance for the coming natural disasters, and geologists are pretty sure people will be able to evacuate before the earthquake strikes. In September of 1859, astronomer Richard Carrington was looking at the sun and suddenly saw a bright flare on its surface. He made a note of it in his records, but only realized how important it was a couple of days later. The energy from that flare reached Earth and struck it directly, causing northern lights to appear above Cuba and burning telegraph lines all around the world. This was dubbed the Carrington event, and it was a solar storm.
Hi there! I invite you to look at some of the coolest phenomena Mother Nature has. I'll start with the red sky. I admit that this scenery is kinda scary, as if it's a scene from a movie. How can our blue sky turn red? Zhoushan's authorities assured people that this abnormality wasn't related to solar activity. This tint appeared due to the refraction of red lights from fishing boats. That day, the weather was foggy and cloudy. The light got reflected from the low-hanging clouds. When weather conditions are right, aerosol particles and droplets of other liquids in the atmosphere refract and scatter the light. In this case, the light source was on fishing boats. Since we started with reflections, we can continue with a forest in Japan that looks as if it's come straight out of a fairy tale. It turns out there are real mushrooms that glow in the dark. They're known as forest fairies, but their official name is the Mycena lux sealy. They're bioluminescent fungi. It means that they glow. These mystical-looking mushrooms are scattered all over old trees and soft ground. You can see them in several different forests in Japan. They've been attracting tourists for many years, since they were first discovered in the 1950s. It makes me feel like I'm looking at a picture from a secret neon-themed party in the woods. Moving on from one mesmerizing forest to another, this one is underwater. There are lakes and there are forests. Kandy Lake in Kazakhstan offers you one inside the other. The lake is almost 100 feet deep. It has a beautiful turquoise lime color, and the submerged trees are seen below the surface. An earthquake in 1911 is the reason why this sunken forest formed. The quake created a huge limestone landslide that formed a natural dam. Rain and water filled the dam. The water covers the tree roots entirely, yet their top parts remain above the surface. This gives the lake a spooky vibe, especially if the weather is foggy. What does it look like under the water? Don't hurry to put on a scuba diving suit. No need to dive in, because you can see the lake's depths from the shore too. The water is super clear. There aren't many rotten tree trunks. In fact, the trees have miraculously resisted decomposition. You can even see the needles on their branches. You can thank the lake's consistent temperature for that. No matter the season, the temperature rarely goes higher than 43 degrees Fahrenheit. In the winter, the lake gets frozen, and people go fishing and ice diving. You can still enjoy the view through the crystal clear ice layer. The next dream destination is Bolivia. Imagine standing on a 4,000 square mile mirror. You can do that in Salar de Uyuni. It's the world's largest natural mirror, since it's a reflective salt flat. The surface is so flat as a result of thousands of years of transformations that happened to several prehistoric lakes. There are other lakes close by, and when they flow into this one, the flat surface turns into a, well, I'll say lake, but it's around 20 inches deep. Yes, the water layer is super shallow, but that's enough to transform the area into a giant mirror. For most animals, this area is non-habitable because of harsh living conditions. Yet flamingos visit this lake's chain of pristine lagoons to feed and breed. 3 out of the world's 6 species of flamingos come here. As you can guess, this is the perfect spot for photographers and tourists. They take cool pics of flamingos standing on the giant mirror lake. Would you like to see the Sea of Stars? Then you should visit the shores of Vadhu in the Maldives. Vadhu is a small island that'll surprise you at nighttime. Do you remember the glowing forest in Japan? Here we have glowing blue waves. The waves shine thanks to a natural chemical reaction called bioluminescence. Phytoplankton is the type of plankton that's responsible for the blue glow. It looks like the water shimmers when waves hit the shore. The next stop is in the southwestern U.S. This is The Wave in Arizona. It's a unique sandstone formation. The sediment has a rippling form and interesting colors. It's made of intersecting U-shaped troughs that have been eroded over time. The wave was formed millions of years ago. This one-of-a-kind formation is popular among hikers and photographers. Yet, it's not easy to visit this place. The formation has a fragile nature, so only around 60 people can visit it in one day. These people should apply for a permit and join the daily lottery system. Do these look like regular trees? Nope. The entire forest is technically one tree. This phenomenon is called clonal groves. All these trees are connected underground by a single root network. That's why trees look like they're copied and pasted with the help of Photoshop. Each trunk is genetically identical to the others. We're now looking at the most famous example of clonal groves, which is Pondo from Utah. It's one of the largest and oldest organisms on our planet. Pondo has 47,000 stems, and it originated from a single seed. It spread by creating new shoots from the expanding root network. Another mesmerizing phenomenon is this Indonesian volcano that has blue flames. It looks like the lava itself is blue when you first see it. In reality, the lava turns blue due to sulfur. When sulfuric gas meets with oxygen at an ultra-high temperature, it burns. Bright blue flames appear, and then lava flows through the mountain. This feature is visible at night. During the day, the lava looks like a regular orange liquid. Ice can come in different shapes and forms. Here is a less known one, the jewel ice. This type of ice can only be seen in Japan's Tokachi River. The river has crystal clear water in general. When the temperatures drop and the river freezes, ice chunks move with the waves to the riverside. These giant diamond-like ice pieces are transparent. That's why they reflect light differently. If you visit the lake at sunset, you'll see golden yellow ice stones. But at any other time of the day, they look blue. It depends on how light scatters in the sky. Another beauty comes with a winter breeze. If you step onto the frozen Abraham Lake in Canada, you'll see ice bubbles under a layer of ice. It might look like they're out of this world, but this beauty isn't so innocent. These ice bubbles are made of methane. Since this gas is flammable, these white orbs aren't perfectly safe. Why are there frozen methane bubbles in this lake? Well, it's due to the natural process of decomposition. Plants and parts of trees deep down at the lake's bottom decay. When this occurs, plants release methane, creating air bubbles. In the meantime, the temperature decreases. Ice bubbles can't reach the surface and get trapped in the ice. It looks kind of like a lava lamp. Even though it's winter and snow might fall, super strong winds wipe away everything from the lake's surface, so we can appreciate this potentially dangerous beauty. How about seeing some flaming rocks? Yanartas is located on an inactive volcano mountain in southwestern Turkey. The name of this rock formation is related to its appearance. It literally means flaming rock. The rocks have been flaming for at least 2,500 years, so they're full of tiny fumaroles that release gases such as methane. The gas ignites when it comes into contact with oxygen and creates eternal flames. Yanartas isn't the only special rock that produces eternal flames. There's a small waterfall in western New York that creates these types of flames too. The same principle applies to the Eternal Flame Falls. The grotto at the waterfall's base emits natural gas. Gas is the reason why flames form. Oh man, I want to see all these wonders with my own eyes. I just wish I could teleport.
Ah, Kiev, you've been dreaming of getting here for years. Getting out your trusty camera, you start taking pictures of the cathedrals, aviation museum, and the Dnipro River, when, without warning, there's an enormous boom behind you. Turning around, you see something towering in the distance. It looks like a gigantic explosion. Uh-oh, time to leave fast. In June 2020, what the people of Kiev were looking at was an anvil cloud, a rare storm formation in the sky. Forming when strong air currents carry water vapor upwards, the air expands and spreads out as it hits the bottom of the stratosphere. It pushes the dense cloud into the cool anvil shape you see, and sometimes it even gets to be a mushroom. Anvil clouds produce some of the most dangerous lightning of all storms, one that's called a bolt out of the blue. This lightning strike seems to magically come out of the blue sky with the storm being many miles away. This type of bolt comes from the top of the anvil and can be 10 times more powerful than a typical lightning strike. People got so frightened after witnessing a giant cloud just 60 miles away, thinking something terrible must have happened. The locals had pictures of the large billow on social media before officials could explain what was going on. Authorities managed to calm everyone's fears by informing them it was nothing more than a natural phenomenon, and a beautiful one at that. Before dissipating, these clouds typically stay in one area regardless of how strong the wind is. Touring around the northern tip of Queensland, Australia, way away from those creepy crawlies, it's time to take a break and relax at the beach. Getting comfortable, you notice a great big shadow passes over you, then another, and yet another. Looking up, this weird weather is simply stunning. The clouds are called morning glory, a very rare type of cloud that almost seems to roll across the sky, looking like a massive tube. These clouds can measure up to 600 miles long, even appearing in large groups as well. This phenomenon is the result of an updraft pushing through the cloud, creating a rolling appearance, while moist cooler air at the back causes them to sink downward. Southern India between July and September 2001. People witnessed one of the strangest weather phenomenon in recorded history. The rain was red. What many would have thought to be a typical rainstorm left them shocked. The color was bright enough to stain clothes. There were other colors too, such as green, yellow, brown, and even black. In the middle of a monsoon, red rain started to fall and did so periodically for several weeks. Researchers have found this unusual rain is stained either by dust or algae, so don't try to catch any on your tongue. Scientists aren't entirely sure how the algae got all the way up there. This does make events like this a little unsettling. Like to take a bubble bath to relax after an exhausting day, but taking too long to fill the bathtub? Problem solved. Head to any coastline after a big storm and take a dip. Foamy tides aren't native to any one place or location. They can be formed anywhere in the world. They're most likely to happen along rocky coastlines, like the coast of San Francisco, Northern Ireland, or the Mululaba, Australia. Each coast has differing conditions forming the sea foams. If you scoop up seawater into a glass and look at it closely, you'll see it's full of tiny particles. Many things like plants, chemicals, and lots of salt and minerals create the perfect formula for foam. When powerful currents and wind mix it all together, we get something that resembles a cappuccino top floating on top of the water. When freezing temperatures hit orchards in Michigan, all kinds of unusual things happen, like ghost apples. No, they're not going to scare you at all. But if you plan on sneaking away one winter to find one, be warned. Everything has to be perfect for this to occur, and it's going to be freezing cold. This is actually a rare weather phenomenon caused by having the apples freeze where they are with rain coating the fruit in a thin layer of ice. The apples then thaw and leak out like applesauce, leaving just the beautiful ice shell behind. The Catatumbo River in Venezuela might be the most electric place in the world, with nearly 300 storm days per year. The lightning storms are so consistent, they're predicted for 3 months in advance. During the wet season in October, you might see 30 lightning flashes in a single minute, a truly shocking experience. With each bolt having the energy to power a single light bulb for 6 months, the impressive display could power all of Venezuela forever. At sunset, strong winds flow around the 3 surrounding mountains, forming storm clouds over the water. As the water droplets of humid air collide with ice crystals from the cold air, it produces the static charges that cause the lightning storms nearly every night. If that wasn't bad enough, some storms have lightning above them as well. Try to take a picture of this one. Jellyfish lightning sprites are electrical discharges high in Earth's atmosphere. They're associated with powerful thunderstorms, but they have nothing to do with rain. These sprites occur 30 to 50 miles up in the sky, in the mesosphere. Artificial lights at night make it a lot harder to see this faint lightning. If you spot one, it'll look tiny, but can be well over 30 miles wide. The red sprites are a type of cold plasma discharge above a thundercloud. They're the balance of the lightning charges between the storm clouds and the ground below. Don't try to find this type of donut at your favorite bakery. It won't be there. Snow donuts are one of the rarest meteorological sights to see, with perfect weather conditions needed just to create them. Found in any snow-covered mountain area like the Rocky Mountains, the wind, temperature, snow, ice, and moisture have to all work together for us to see these phenomenal rings. A thin layer of wet snow on the ground. Under that layer, ice or powdered snow. Then, a strong enough breeze to roll the donut down a hill, just like a snowball. Once it stops rolling, it can be the size of a baseball or as large as a car tire. It all depends on how strong the wind is. A newly formed snow donut won't stay around for very long, so hurry up with that camera. Watching the sunset over the horizon, the beautiful purples and pink overhead are nothing compared to the 3 suns you see in front of you. Wow, since when did Earth get 3 suns? These phantom stars sometimes appearing beside the sun are called sundogs. Maybe they're called that because they're kind of dogging the actual sun? Sundogs often appear as colored areas of light at the same height above the horizon as the sun. They're mostly observed on a ring or halo, where ice crystals best reflect the light. There are also moon dogs that appear alongside the moon and are formed by lunar light passing through ice crystals, though these aren't seen nearly as much as their daytime partners. Taking photos in the wild, you finally found the perfect spot to take that dream shot. The crystal clear water, the pines, the mountains, and the flying saucer. Wait, a flying saucer? Oh, aliens are here! You might be thinking this if you saw a saucer-shaped cloud. I'm not even going to try to pronounce their name, though. Put that on the screen, please. Wait, just kidding. It's altocumulus lenticularis. Aren't you impressed? These are really just unusual cloud formations over mountaintops. When moist air flows over a mountain, a wave is created if the temperature difference is perfect. As the air passes through the wave, evaporation occurs, and a series of these clouds may form into an oval shape. Not aliens at all. Whew! The sky is falling! The sky is falling! Well, people who have experienced these clouds say they look like they're coming down from the sky. Mammatus clouds look like giant white lumpy marshmallows, but it might be hard to toast these ones. These weird fluffy clouds can extend hundreds of miles in any direction, remaining visible for short periods at the bottom of anvil or other thunderstorm clouds. The strange bubble shapes are formed from turbulence within the storm itself, creating an uneven cloud base and appearing anywhere in the world. Mammatus clouds form when moist air sinks into dry air. The air must be cooler than its surroundings, cooled with ice, or be heavy with water. We all know that space missions come with a hefty price tag. To break it down, a ticket to space for an astronaut starts at around $20 million and can soar up to $50 million. NASA may be a well-funded organization, but you can bet they're always on the lookout to cut costs and save millions wherever they can. Plus, NASA has long realized they do not need to go to Saturn's moon to study if there's life there. We already have the suitable conditions for extraterrestrial life in Wyoming. If that resonates with you, then you already understand why NASA is so interested in Yellowstone. To explore life beyond Earth, we need to study environments that mimic extraterrestrial conditions. That's where all those hot springs come into play. Now, it's not the entire park that piques NASA's interest. Let's leave the bears, moose, and other Earthlings to our local biologists. The real hotspot is the geysers, where microbial life flourishes. Oh, by the way, Yellowstone has more geysers and hot springs than the rest of the world combined. In some of them, water can reach temperatures as high as 192 degrees Fahrenheit. You might think, hey, that's only good for steeping tea. But here's the thing. Life in the form of microbes not only survives but thrives in these extreme conditions, having adapted specifically to them. So, could these microbes help us find life on other planets? Absolutely. Now, let's shine the spotlight on the real superstar, the Grand Prismatic Spring. It's packed with silica, which gives it that stunning color. Silica reflects sunlight, especially the blue wavelengths, which is why it looks so vibrant. The coolest part, though, is not the color, but the fact that this spring can teach us a lot about how life evolved. Way back around 4.5 billion years ago, I wasn't around then, living things didn't know how to harness energy from sunlight yet, so they were using chemical processes instead, just like they do now at the Grand Prismatic Spring. But why are we talking about other planets? Well, if life on Earth kicked off in a comparable way to what we see in Yellowstone, there's a good chance we could find something similar elsewhere in the universe. And if we could nail down exactly how life started here, we could really fine-tune our search for life on other planets. Geysers, very similar to those in Yellowstone, can be found on moons like Enceladus, which orbits Saturn, and Triton, which is a moon of Neptune. But how do they compare to the geysers we see in Yellowstone? Well, back in 1989, NASA's Voyager 2 spacecraft made a groundbreaking discovery when it spotted geysers on Triton. This was the first time anyone had seen a geyser outside of Earth, not counting the volcanic eruptions on Jupiter's moon, Io, that were found by Voyager 1 in 1979. Since then, more geysers have been found on other moons in our solar system. In Yellowstone, geysers are heated by hot water from deep within the Earth. However, geysers on some of the outer moons get their heat from tidal forces, the gravitational pull from the big planets they orbit. You know how ocean tides on Earth are affected by the moon and the sun? Well, these moons experience something similar, but on a much larger scale. Beneath the icy surfaces of these moons are warm, salty oceans that stay liquid because the thick ice above keeps them insulated. As the moons move closer and further from their parent planets, the constant tugging creates heat, causing the warm water below to shoot out into space whenever there's a crack in the ice. This icy crust and the warm water underneath are a bit like a frozen pond on Earth. But could there be life swimming around in these hidden oceans, just like there are critters thriving beneath the ice of a pond? That's something scientists want to find out. NASA hopes to send advanced spacecraft to explore these distant moons and look for signs of life. But those warm oceans are buried miles beneath the frozen surface. So, how do we reach them? The answer may lie in geysers. In February 2019, a group of planetary scientists decided to visit Yellowstone in the winter to study the similarities between Earth's geysers and those in space. They know that Yellowstone's geysers are home to some tough little microbes called extremophiles, which thrive in extreme conditions like hot or acidic water. The researchers wanted to learn as much as they could about these microbes and the environments they live in. They brought along a bunch of scientific tools to measure things like temperature, pH levels, and oxygen in the water. They also used special instruments to analyze the chemicals in the ice and rocks and sniff the air for gases. Plus, they collected samples of rock, ice, and water from the geysers, catching tiny droplets on sheets of foil coated in geyser spray. Their main target was the Great Fountain Geyser in Yellowstone's Midway Geyser Basin, which puts on a spectacular show 2 to 3 times a day. However, visiting in winter posed some challenges. Some scientists were delayed by snowy weather, arriving late at night right before they were supposed to enter the park. Then their SUV got stuck in a snowdrift and had to be rescued by a snowplow. The next day, riding in a snow coach, the team had to trudge through deep snow for nearly a mile to reach the geyser, keeping an eye out for elk, bison, and even bears. As they made their way to the Great Fountain Geyser, they took breaks to gather samples and measurements from other interesting pools along the way, like Lemon Pool and Surprise Pool. Even though Yellowstone feels remote, it's not nearly as far away as places like Enceladus and Triton. It's a unique natural laboratory that can teach us a lot about life on Earth and potentially beyond. Oh, as for labs, the Great Prismatic Spring may count as one. Look at these guys. Under the microscope, they look like matches. Their official Latin name is Thermus aquaticus. They live in this hot spring, and these bacteria have saved millions of people's lives. Now, if you're skeptical about what I just said, then you need to know that these bacteria help to create the basis of PCR tests widely used in today's medicine to give fast and precise diagnosis. Back in the 60s, a microbiologist named Thomas Brock was exploring the park's superheated thermal pools and stumbled upon something amazing. Brock was super interested in bacteria that could thrive in extreme conditions. During his 10-year journey studying geysers and thermal springs, he found a microbe in a spring called mushroom pool that could survive in nearly boiling water. This little guy, Thermus aquaticus, turned out to be a game changer for science. Why? Well, it's crucial for a technique called PCR, also known as polymerase chain reaction, which is used to quickly make copies of DNA samples. Before Brock's discovery, this process was tricky because the heat could damage the enzymes that hold DNA together. But thanks to Thermus aquaticus, scientists could now heat and cool DNA samples without breaking them down, making everything faster and easier. It all happened because researchers had purified an enzyme called tag polymerase out of this organism. Those Yellowstone microbes could also be your new go-to for a delicious and sustainable breakfast. A unique microbe was discovered there during some NASA-funded research, and it's now being transformed into tasty vegan breakfast patties and cream cheese. Originally found in a hot spring, this little wonder is called Fusarium strange flavolapsus, and it caught the attention of space enthusiasts as a powerful protein source for long space missions. Plus, it requires way less water and land than beef, making it a smart choice for the planet. Researchers initially looked at this microbe for biofuel, but soon realized it could be cultivated into a complete protein with a texture reminiscent of chicken. Marked as FY, it can be turned into a variety of food products, all thanks to a fermentation process that keeps it free from contaminants. Oh, almost forgot. NASA is even working on a bioreactor to grow FY in space. Ooh, stay tuned. Massive tsunamis, destructive tornadoes, giant meteorites, devastating earthquakes. Ooh, better have insurance. But all these are minor natural disasters compared with the eruption of a volcano. Some volcanoes can destroy a city, as it was with Pompeii, or some islands in the Pacific Ocean. But there's a dangerous type of eruption that can destroy all life on the planet. This type is called flood basalt. But first of all, let's figure out what a volcano is. Rivers of hot liquid metals and incandescent rocks flow deep inside our planet. And the deeper it gets, the hotter they are. The source of this hot mass is the mantle, which is the middle layer of Earth, located between the core and the crust. These fiery streams are called magma, and it flows everywhere. But we don't feel its heat because of the thick layer of our planet's crust. Magma is lighter than the crust, so it always tries to break out to the surface. And in some places, it succeeds. At the junctions of tectonic plates, it splashes out when one plate moves under a thicker one. When magma reaches the surface, it becomes lava. This substance burns the ground around and cools down quickly. It hardens and forms a new layer of rock. The following splash of magma falls on the top of this layer. Thus, a mountain appears layer by layer over millions of years. And in its mouth, a fault of tectonic plates splashes out magma. This mountain is called a volcano. It spits lava and ash into the sky, then falls asleep and wakes up again during seismic activity. Now imagine that several giant volcanoes begin to splash out an infinite amount of magma. It just doesn't end and covers an entire continent. This is a flood basalt, and one day it did happen. About 252 million years ago, in the northern part of our planet, a lot of magma accumulated under Earth's crust. Trillions of tons of hot rock were concentrated in one place on a gigantic territory. And gradually, all this fiery energy began to seep out of the ground. Hot gas started to come out in different places in this territory. The ground shook endlessly, and the crust rose hundreds of feet, all pointing to the approach of an imminent catastrophe. And then, at some point, magma began to pour out. Giant fountains of fire burst out of the ground. Do you know these geysers in Iceland? So imagine the same things, but dozens of times higher and with hot lava and ash instead of water and steam. The ash and lava flows were so strong that they reached the clouds. Under Earth's crust, there was a gigantic bubble of magma, and it squeezed out fiery jets under the pressure of rock and ground. The rift was getting bigger. Magma was flowing out everywhere. It began to fill the entire North Continent. The flood of lava spread wider and wider. The streams of molten rock seemed endless. Layers of molten basalt rock overlapped one another, forming a giant tsunami of lava 160 feet high. It poured out of the ground for hundreds of thousands of years, flooding forests, rivers, lakes, and meadows. At the same time, billions of tons of volcanic ash rose into the sky, which could lead to a volcanic winter, since sulfur dioxide in the ash reflected the sun's rays. This might have lowered the temperature on the continent by several degrees. Then, dust and ash probably condensed and formed giant clouds that watered the surface with toxic acid rain. But after that, the cooled lava formed a giant thick shield, preventing magma from seeping out of the endless fire bubble. the global catastrophe was over, but only for a short time. Trillions of tons of magma were still flowing under a thick layer of solid basalt. The fiery rivers couldn't reach the top, so they spread out to the sides. As a result of this expansion, huge nets were formed under the thick rock. They ran in different directions like a spider web and heated Earth's crust. Gases started coming out from under the surface again. More and more energy accumulated there until an explosion of unimaginable force occurred. In addition to magma, carbon dioxide and ash escaped to the surface. They filled the atmosphere and caused the greenhouse effect. The temperature on the whole planet increased by several degrees. This release provoked another catastrophe that began in the ocean. There were deposits of methane, an explosive gas, on the seabed. Under ice-cold water, the methane was frozen and harmless. But the greenhouse effect in the atmosphere warmed up the entire ocean. Millions of tons of methane began to rise to the surface. This gas is more potent than carbon dioxide. Therefore, when it hit the atmosphere, the temperatures on Earth increased again. The whole globe turned into a hot sauna. In previous cool and humid places, the temperature reached those of a modern Sahara. Of course, most animals and insects couldn't survive such a cataclysm, but ocean life took much more damage. The heat and methane reduced the amount of oxygen in the ocean. Fish and other marine life couldn't survive in such conditions. New problems appeared when anaerobic bacteria started to multiply in non-oxygen water. They fed on methane and carbon dioxide and released hydrogen sulfide, a toxic substance that poisoned water even more. About 75% of land animals and 95% of the ocean's inhabitants went extinct. This flood basalt eruption was the only disaster in the planet's history that destroyed almost all plants and significantly reduced the insect population. Several species of the hardiest animals managed to survive in these conditions. The planet took about 10 million years to recover completely. After that, evolution began a new process of developing life. And here are two pieces of news. The bad one is that flood basalt will happen again and will be no less devastating than 252 million years ago. The good news is that it will happen in hundreds of millions of years. But when that happens, humanity will need to be prepared. It will start on the ocean floor. First, lava fountains miles high will begin boiling the water and emit sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, where it will reflect sunlight. Along with ash and magma, a massive amount of water vapor will rise into the air. Livestock won't survive, and people will have breathing problems. Acid rain and increased humidity caused by the evaporation of the oceans will lead to the corrosion of buildings. All flights will be canceled. People will have to wear gas masks. Many animals won't be able to handle this eruption, but humans will adapt quickly. But then another and another eruption will follow, and this endless catastrophe will soon deplete the resources of humanity. Plants and trees won't recover so fast, and oxygen production will be significantly reduced. Let's hope that humanity will have colonized other planets, including those outside the solar system by that time. And now, let's jump back to the present. About 70% of the seismic activity associated with volcanoes occurs underwater. So let's see how ordinary volcanoes on the ocean floor work. Water, as well as land, rests on tectonic plates. Therefore, if their structure is broken at the joints, magma seeps through them. But unlike terrestrial volcanoes, lava here doesn't spread in different directions, burning everything it meets. It solidifies under the pressure of cold water. Underwater volcanoes can erupt for a long time with breaks in between. Magma covers the seabed. After another 100 or 1,000 years, a new eruption begins and a new layer of rock forms over the previous one. Over millions of years, layer by layer, magma is rising. And then, one day, a volcano rises out of the water. Magma splashes out of it and increases its height. And now we have a large volcanic island. Then the volcano falls asleep and life appears on the newly formed piece of land. Magma flows from the planet's mantle, filled with various chemical elements. This hot mix saturates the soil with useful substances and thus promotes the growth of plants and trees. Then birds and other animals arrive there, and the volcanic island turns into a paradise. Then humans arrive and pave over paradise to put up a parking lot and a franchise burger joint. The ground shakes beneath you. The pictures rattle on the walls. You hear a rumble off in the distance. Then, boom, a deafening explosion. The shockwave blasts through the windows and sets off car alarms. You duck under the dining table for cover, but then you remember you live not far from a supervolcano in the middle of a tropical jungle. So, staying in one place isn't a good idea. The shaking finally halts. You take this chance to peek outside and see a giant cloud of smoke covering the sky. It's lunchtime, but you wouldn't know it. The sun is completely veiled and darkness falls. The power's out in the whole city. In this darkness, you see red molten lava shooting from the sky and spilling on the rim. You run outside along with dozens of your neighbors. Your priority right now, find safe shelter and fast. You think about taking the car, but with everyone running on the road, that's a no-go. So you run on foot where the crowd is going. Supervolcanoes are in a league of their own when it comes to natural disasters. Surprisingly, it's not all about size or height. A volcano is dubbed super if it erupts more than 240 cubic miles of magma. That's more than enough to overfill Lake Erie. It must also have a history of erupting and a magnitude of 8 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index. The largest active volcano on Earth is Hawaii's Mauna Loa. It's so big, it would cover the entire state of Rhode Island plus some. And next time you see a commercial plane flying high in the sky, remember that 30,000-some-foot altitude is about as tall as Mauna Loa is from base to summit. It's technically taller than Everest when you measure it like that, yet it's not considered a supervolcano. So you're running along the dark road not knowing and barely seeing where to go. Then, all of a sudden, a massive flaming boulder smashes through the bridge in front of you. You and everyone else are now stranded on the side of the volcano as it's getting more chaotic each second. Most of the crowd disperses, finding their own ways to safety. You remember there's a way to the other side not many people know about, but you'll have to cross a raging river through the dense jungle. You calm what's left of the crowd, and everyone follows you to your secret getaway. You finally get out of the city limits and head into the jungle. With the sky already dark, the tall trees and thick leaves make it almost pitch black. Everyone gets out their phone flashlights to navigate through the dark path. You all need to stick together and make sure nobody gets lost. Suddenly, fiery rocks strike the trees not far from you. Everyone jolts and tries to rush ahead, but nowhere is safe when it's raining scalding fire all around. You and your group have to pick up the pace or else. Imagine a typical avalanche or mudslide. Very dangerous situations on their own. Now, imagine an avalanche of lava rocks and lava sliding down a mountain instead of mud. That's what's making its way towards you right now. More and more people catch up with your group and bring news that the entire neighborhood is submerged in lava. It's traveling quicker than you thought. You can never really predict how fast a lava flow will be until you see it. It all depends on how thick it is and how steep the mountain slopes. Lava can move slowly at about 20 feet a minute, a fraction of the average person's walking speed. Or it can flow as fast as 30 miles per hour, which even the fastest person on Earth can't outrun. But the lava isn't even the most dangerous problem. If you didn't have protection, the gases spewing from the eruption would fill your lungs, and those spread faster and further than the lava flow. Your eyes and throat would be itchy. You'd get a headache, dizziness, increased heart rate, difficulty breathing. The worst would be passing out from the lack of oxygen. Luckily, everyone managed to grab their gas masks before leaving their homes. You're now entering the treacherous terrain of the jungle and the danger zone. Everyone's phone batteries are giving out one by one, so your vision is even more limited. The terrain is tougher and you can't hear any sounds from the river. At this point, you're not even sure if you're going the right way. But your instincts tell you the deeper you go, the safer you'll be. The path is muddy, and the vines are hindering everyone's movements. That's when you hear something big running through the jungle. It's coming up on you fast. You can't see a thing until it's right up on you. A bear! And there goes a rhino. Wild cats, domestic cats, dogs, different creatures of all sizes and species. They all come running through the jungle right past you. You and your fellow humans aren't the only ones fleeing from the eruption. The rumbling is still going on. Before you know it, a shower of fire rock strikes right behind you and ignites parts of the jungle. There's no going back. Everyone picks up and runs for it. You hear thunder in the distance. A flash of lightning lights up the dark sky. You think, finally, some rain to wash away this fiery nightmare. But that's not a regular storm brewing. These giant smoke clouds can mimic a thunderstorm under similar conditions. Your luck finally pays off. You hear the river straight ahead. You reach the bank and have to hop on some stones to get to the other side. You almost slip when someone from the group catches you just in time. Whew, that was too close. Not far down the river is a large waterfall leading straight to a shallow lake with sharp rocks at the bottom. The ash from the lava falls like snow, covering most of the trees and landing on the river. Ash is one of the most dangerous things about volcanic eruptions. You're soaked to the bone, but it's a lot better than ash and smoke. And then the rest of the group follow. The next thing you know, the river starts steaming as lava meets the bank and runs into the water. You try your best to speed things up. The lava can heat this water up to dangerous levels, and there are still people slowly crossing the river on the slippery rocks. Luckily, you manage to get everyone across. Well, almost everyone. You turn around and see someone's leg got caught between two rocks. The lava continues to pour into the river. You can feel the heat of the steam. You rush back to this person and try to pull them out. Their leg won't budge. Someone else from the group comes to help, and you're finally able to pull them out in the nick of time. You and everyone else, now exhausted from your trek, keep going as far as possible. That's when you see the main road that connects you to the broken bridge. There are others on the road that got out safely, and even some cars filling up with survivors and heading fast out of the area. The volcano is still spewing lava, and the entire city is flooded with it. What was once your town now looks like a giant burning lake. Planes and helicopters can't fly because of the smoke and ash, so don't count on an air rescue. You're still at risk even though you're on safer ground, so it's still too early to celebrate. Everyone continues to move away from the city. The further, the better. The ground continues to shake, but this time it's even more intense than before. Supervolcanoes are powerful enough to cause many earthquakes. But it's a good thing you're out in the open, far from the buildings and debris in the city. Now, back to reality. Rest assured that a volcanic eruption of this intensity won't happen for a very long time, as in millions of years. Besides, thanks to warning systems and humanity's preparation for such an event, it's extremely rare for even a regular volcano to do as much damage as it could. So, don't scratch Yellowstone off your travel list just yet.
On September 16th of 2023, without warning, the Earth began to hum. A low, strange vibration reverberated through the crust. This set off seismic alarms all across the globe. For 9 days straight, the planet was pulsing with this horrifying rhythm, and scientists had no idea what was going on. Meanwhile, the total disaster was happening in Greenland. It wasn't an earthquake. They knew that much. They could tell it by the rhythm. Since we all live on giant tectonic plates, they constantly move and slide on magma like icebergs on water. Sometimes, as they move, they can rub against each other or collide or break. In any case, all this causes an incredible release of energy that sends shockwaves through the ground. That's when we feel the ground literally shaking, and it's what we call an earthquake. These vibrations we feel are called seismic waves. Seismometers pick them up as pings or rumbles. In a typical earthquake, they create a bunch of different frequencies. It's a crazy chaotic mix of low and high frequencies, like smashing every piano key. What was weird about the Greenland event is that the signals weren't like that at all. It was a steady, single-frequency vibration, as if some ancient machine was stirring beneath the earth. It's like one piano key being struck over and over, creating a doom-like, repetitive sound. Turns out, what they were hearing wasn't the noise of tectonic plates going wild. It was a phenomenon seismologists had never seen before. The days passed, and the mysterious noise just kept going. The vibrations repeated every 90 seconds, echoing around the world. The hunt for answers was growing more desperate. Seismologists had no idea what they were dealing with. They had to gather a huge international team of 68 people from 15 countries. All these scientists were gathering seismic data, satellite images, and doing some advanced math for several days, until they finally realized who the culprit was. Water. It all happened in a remote, desolate region of East Greenland. This place is full of fjords, narrow inlets of the sea between high cliffs, kinda like deep water-filled valleys surrounded by towering rocky sides. In this area, surrounded by jagged peaks and icy waters, the air was still. The landscape seemingly frozen in time. Nothing here changed much for years. Until one day, a colossal landslide has unfolded in the Dixon Fjord. One of those steep mountainsides towering over the fjord at almost 4,000 feet high collapsed in a massive landslide. Picture a huge chunk of this mountain crumbling and crashing down into the fjord below. This sent a deluge of rock and ice crashing into the water. The impact was just apocalyptic, 882 million cubic feet of debris. That's enough ice and rock to fill 10,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools, or 10 Great Pyramids of Giza. And all this nightmare hurled into the water with such force that it kick-started a tsunami about 360 feet high, taller than the Statue of Liberty, into the air. What's crazy is that this incredibly powerful wave was trapped in the fjord by narrow cliffs, unable to escape. It's like water sloshing in a closed bathtub. For 9 days, the mega tsunami continued to churn through it. That's why we heard this endless hum. It was a rhythmic back and forth of the water slamming against the walls. The shock waves were rippling deep into Earth's crust, vibrations so strong that they were picked up by seismometers around the globe. This was a phenomenon so rare, so unprecedented, that it left scientists stunned. It turned out to be a perfect storm of elements. A glacier, weakened by years of warming, could no longer bear the weight of the mountain above. This collapse was inevitable, and the chaos literally shook the Earth to its core. And people often hang out in this area with cruise ships passing by. We're lucky that no lives were lost in the disaster. It was a close call though. A tourist ship stranded in the area just 2 days before narrowly escaped the tsunami's reach by pure luck. But it doesn't mean there were no losses. The waves destroyed a nearby Inuit site, which was there untouched for over 200 years. They also swept away the huts at a research station that were about 43 miles away. The vibrations traveled from Greenland to the South Pole in less than an hour. That just shows how dangerous events like this can be. And this isn't the only place where such catastrophes are happening. In the beautiful California community of Rancho Palos Verdes, the ground is shifting so quickly that it's tearing homes apart. The land there has always been kinda unstable. It has some unique geology. It's built on soft, clay-rich soil and sits on a geological fault line, which makes it prone to landslides. This means that this land is prone to slow, natural shifting over many years, even when no crazy weather is happening. It's been like this for decades, but usually it's slow and pretty manageable, like about a foot a year. Imagine a tree that you played with as a kid moving 20 feet to the left as you grow up. For decades, residents adapted. They built their homes on adjustable beams. This helped the houses to move with the land, and that strategy worked well until now. Recently, things have been getting much worse in the community. Now, the land is moving by a foot in a single week. That would be like if the same tree moved almost 960 feet since you were a child. The past 2 years have also caused some heavy rains, and the weather has been getting worse. This increased water content in the soil. The land became heavier and more prone to rapid movement. Now this once idyllic seaside escape turned into a disaster zone. Cracks have appeared in closets, gardens, and roads, growing larger with each passing day. Streets that were once smooth are now buckled and twisted, with roads turning into a crazy theme park. Houses that once stood firm are being ripped from their foundations, some of them split in half. One of the houses had its front door 8 feet off the ground. Entire neighborhoods have been plunged into chaos. Utility companies had to switch off gas and electricity indefinitely to prevent potential disasters. The hardest hit is the coastal neighborhood of Portuguese Bend, where residents are living on the edge, literally. It always had amazing ocean views and cool sea breezes, with horses and peacocks still wandering the tree-lined streets. But now, it's like an earthquake hit. Only this time, the earth isn't stopping. For many, this place feels like paradise, if only the land would stop shifting beneath their feet. So the locals don't give up. Some of them had to leave, but many are determined to stay and fight, despite the destruction. But they still have to pour in hundreds of thousands of dollars to save their properties. People have installed generators to keep the lights on and set up sewer systems and pumps to drain the groundwater causing the landslides. Some say that the only way for these neighborhoods to survive might be to go completely off-grid, installing power walls to store energy and stuff like that. People are trying their best to run the sewer system off generators. They hope that they could get rid of this water in the soil that's causing these hellish landslides in the first place. They're determined to fight, but they will need help and support from the government to fight this disaster. Landslides are actually more common across the US than many might think. And new maps and data show that tons of people in the country might be in danger. Scientists managed to create the first very detailed, very cool map that shows where these landslides might happen, county by county. It's based on a lot of data and the history of 1 million previous landslides. They say that nearly 40% of the United States is at risk of experiencing landslide activity, which could lead to some insane catastrophes in certain areas. Luckily, now both residents and engineers can keep this in mind. But all this shows how vulnerable we are to natural disasters, and how we should always stay alerted.
In Russia, on the shores of the Baltic Sea, there's an enigmatic national park. The Dancing Forest is a place that no scientist has managed to explain so far. The pine trees of the forest are all crooked and twisted into loops and spirals. The forest didn't appear until the early 60s, when the pines were planted in order to make the sand dune in that area more stable. One theory is that it's the unstable sand that made the trees twist in such a way. Other theories for the crooked trees are strong winds, or even supernatural powers. Some people say the forest is a place where positive and negative energies meet, twisting the trees. Local legend says that if a person climbs through one of the rings of a tree, it'll add an extra year to this person's life, or they'll be granted a wish. I like that one. Speaking of bizarre trees, and one grows in the region of Piedmont, Italy. There, a cherry tree grows on the top of a mulberry tree. The strange thing is that both trees are perfectly healthy. A continuous storm at Saturn's North Pole has an odd shape, a hexagon. This is probably because of the gradient of the winds. The total length of this cloud pattern is 9,000 miles, which is about 1,200 miles longer than the Earth's diameter. The hexagon has been observed for many years, but it gets even more mysterious because it changes color too. It used to be turquoise, but it has recently shifted to a golden color. The reason for the color change is that the pole gets exposed to sunlight as the seasons change. Now, rain isn't unusual for Oakville, Washington. However, this one still doesn't have any solid scientific explanation. Instead of common raindrops, people watch translucent jelly-like blobs fall from the skies. These blobs covered about 20 square miles. Those who got really close to the rain experienced flu-like symptoms. What were the blobs? Researchers claim that the blobs contain human white blood cells. Later tests showed no presence of nuclei. Some people claim the blobs might have been evaporated jellyfish resulting in rain, or maybe even waste from a commercial plane. Walking rocks, also known as sailing rocks, move across the Death Valley National Park in California without any external intervention, leaving long trails in the dirt and sand along their way. Various time-lapse footages of the moving rocks have been taken. Scientists even installed GPS navigators on some of the rocks, and it showed that the rocks move at a considerable speed. Some researchers believe that the movement is due to thin sheets of ice that form overnight at freezing temperatures in the valley, letting the rocks move until it melts during the day. Or there was a Rolling Stones concert. Nah. The Batagayka crater in Siberia looks like a doorway to the underworld. It's about a half-mile long and over 280 feet deep, but it never stops growing. As it gets deeper, it exposes more underground layers. The layers show what our planet looked like thousands of years ago, as the slumps reveal the used-to-be climates. The crater appeared back in the 60s, and it all started with rapid deforestation. Trees no longer cast shade on the ground, and it got hotter. The permafrost melted, resulting in the crater formation. The throbbing hum in Taos, New Mexico has driven locals wild since the 1990s. The low-frequency hum deprives people of sleep and depletes their energy. Even though scientists have tried to find the source of the hum, they still haven't pinpointed its origin. Different variations of the hum have also been heard in the UK, Australia, Canada, and other areas of the US. Luckily, only about 2% of the world's population can hear it. The hums have been blamed on mechanical devices, multiple disturbances of auditory systems, and even animals. The West Seattle hum, for example, was blamed on toadfish. Fairy rings, also known as elf rings or pixie rings, are mysterious rings of mushrooms that appear in grasslands and forested areas. There's a lot of debate about why these fungi form a nearly perfect circle. Some superstitions claim that fairy dances would burn the ground, causing mushrooms to rapidly grow. In Costa Rica, there's an assortment of about 300 spherical stone balls. Locals call them las bolas, which is simply the balls in English. These stones have an almost perfect round shape. Some of them are huge, weighing up to 16 tons each. They're also made of different materials: gabbro, limestone, and sandstone. They're considered to have been put in straight lines in front of the chief's houses, but there's no precise information of their origin. Some myths claim that these stones originated in Atlantis. If you ever travel to the Mekong River in late October, you have a chance of seeing glowing balls rising from the water and beelining up into the air. Locals call these glowing balls the Naga fireballs. The size of the lights vary. The reddish balls can be as tiny as a spark and as large as a basketball. There can be dozens to thousands of balls a night. Scientists don't have any solid explanation for why it happens, but it could be due to flammable gases released by the marshy environment. Some superstitious locals are sure it's all because of a giant serpent living in the Mekong. Great balls of fire! In Minnesota, on the north shore of Lake Superior, there's a park known for the Devil's Kettle. This is a waterfall that splits in two. One part of the river continues, while the other part disappears into a hole in the ground. Whatever object you throw into the Devil's Kettle won't reappear. Scientists still haven't fully explained where the water that drops into the hole goes. Devil's Kettle is considered to be unsafe for people because it's nearly impossible to trace the flow. Yeah, not a place to go tubing. Grunions are fish known for their bizarre mating ritual. The females climb out of the water and onto the shore. They dig their tails into the sand in order to lay eggs. The legs stay hidden in the sand, waiting. 10 days later, the high tide comes, washing the newly hatched young to the sea. Scientists still can't give any solid explanation for this way of breeding. People who live in rural central Norway over the Hessdalen Valley can often witness floating lights of white, yellow, and red cross the sky. The lights appear both at day and night, and once back in the 80s, they were spotted 15 to 20 times in a single week. The Hessdalen lights can last just a few seconds, but sometimes they can last more than an hour. The lights move, seeming to float or even sway around. Some scientists believe that the reason for these lights is due to ionized iron dust. Others say it's combustion that includes sodium, oxygen, and hydrogen. Many people claim they're just misidentified aircrafts. Yellowstone Park has a famous boiling lake, but it's not the world's only place of boiling water. Deep in the Amazon, there's the 4-mile Chane-Tempishka River that's always hot. The name means boiled by the sun. Well, it's not exactly boiling, but it can reach 196 degrees Fahrenheit, enough to cook pasta. Ooh, let's try that. The lowest temperature in these waters is about 113 degrees. This river still can't be scientifically explained because it would require close proximity to a volcano for the water to reach such temperatures. However, the closest volcano is 400 miles away. But there could be a fault between the Earth that could explain this phenomenon. In western Venezuela, locals living close to the Catatumbo River aren't afraid of lightning because they see it almost every single night. It starts at around 7 o'clock and doesn't stop until dawn. The everlasting Catatumbo lightning did once stop for a few months, from January to March 2010. It was probably due to drought, or maybe the charge ran out. In 1991, a scientist suggested that the phenomenon happens because of cold and warm air currents meeting in the area. Another theory is that the lightning could be due to the presence of uranium in the bedrock. Speaking of lightning, I got a bolt. Bye!
Alert! Alert! Leave all your things behind and find safety immediately! The southern continent has just erupted. This is not a drill. You see people running around, screaming their heads out. Cars bumping into each other. The whole nation is in panic. You're on the southern coast of Australia, but the sky is black and it stretches further than your eye can see. Your friend in southern India calls you and says the same thing. There's ash in the sky and it's raining down on you. You hear rumbling in the distance, and it isn't even your stomach to blame. Everyone starts running inland. The black clouds swallow up everything in sight. Cars, trees, buildings. You're unable to see anything in front of you. Everyone's confused and scared. A tsunami breaches the shores, covering everything in its path. This is the Great Antarctic Eruption. Antarctica is that big continental desert covered in ice. In fact, it's technically the largest desert in the world. It's also covered with a whole lot of volcanoes, just chilling around. Scientists discovered that there are 138 volcanoes in Antarctica, 91 of which are hidden beneath the icy surface, and 47 on top. And there might even be more. But most of these volcanoes are dormant. And for a volcano to be dormant, it has to be fast asleep for the last 50,000 years. The last volcano eruption was Mount Erebus in the western part of the continent. It's the most active volcano in the south side of the world and is roughly 12,500 feet above sea level. That's as high as stacking the Burj Khalifa on top of itself 5 times. There's a whole bunch of these volcanoes stretched across the entire continent. In the most concentrated region, the volcanoes spread the distance equivalent to that between Canada and Mexico. And that's not even all of them. Scientists have warned that if any of these interior ice-contained volcanoes were to erupt, they'd melt the western Antarctic part of the land and increase the spill of ice into the ocean. It would raise the sea level and flood many endangered lands that are already at risk. And that's not mentioning the tectonic plates shifting underneath the surface, which allows some of the magma to squeeze its way to some surfaces. It's scary enough to expect what would happen if a huge volcano erupted. But what would happen if all the volcanoes in the Antarctic continent erupted at the same time? If you were one of those scientists on a boat on their way to conduct some experiments, you would begin to feel unease. You'd notice the water carrying a bit more of the current than usual. You look at your fellow scientists, and they too have the same look on their faces. As you land at the shore and take out all your tools and equipment, things don't seem normal. But the work has to be done. You head to the base and settle in. Business as usual. In the barren land, you see some emperor penguins waddling around. hunting, playing, and doing penguin stuff. But as you look around, you notice that the penguins all suddenly head to the ocean, and many of the wild Antarctic birds also begin flying towards the horizon. Weird. Then the ground starts shaking, and behind you appears a tower of smoke reaching to the sky. The ashes from a volcano can be very harmful for anyone with lung conditions, and even healthy people. The gases that come with it are usually blown away quickly, but are also harmful to humans and cause irritation to the eyes and throat. But if you're nearby, you may need a gas mask, or better yet, evacuate! The gases and ashes are the most dangerous part of a volcanic eruption. Even though the lava spewing and explosion may seem scary, the smoke in the sky can spread far away and even halt planes flying around. You look to your fellow scientists and they signal to you that it's time to go. Make like the penguins and swim off. But the waters are extremely rough and the rumblings getting louder and louder. Suddenly, you see more smoke wafting towards the sky, but from different locations. Back to the boat! It's sad to say, but leaving all that equipment was needed to survive. Carrying all that stuff would have slowed you down, but you're safe. For now. Looking behind you, you see a dark smoke screen covering every corner of the continent. Volcanoes have different types of eruptions. It's not just the shooting out lava into the sky scenario. They can range from aggressive to calm. Some spew out lava and some don't. This all depends on the environment, the number of gases contained, or if there's any groundwater present, and even the chemistry of the magma. So, chances are you'd be seeing all various types of explosions around you. You're out of Antarctica's mainland, but it's surrounded by lagoons and giant ice caps all around. You're doing your best to maneuver around them. But the ash is falling down all around. The sky is dark as the smoke blocks out the sun. Volcanic ash comes in all sizes and can cause different damage, from as little as lung and eye irritation to smothering vegetation and crops. And that's just the thing. More often than not, these volcanic ashes are extremely thick. They can even collapse the roofing of some buildings if a lot of ash is accumulated. Not to mention blocking roads and compromising aquatic life. And that flash in the sky isn't your imagination. Ash clouds in the sky are so powerful that they create electrical fields that can create lightning storms. And these bad boys can interfere with radio signals and even start fires. Also, these clouds are extremely hot on their own. As if that lava flow isn't enough to start any fires. Oh well. But there are some volcanoes that are explosive, and along with the ashes flying around, there are flying rocks. This overheated rubble comes striking down like meteoroids from the sky, and can be pretty dangerous. You see the rocks hit the surrounding ice caps and water around you. As you reach a somewhat safe zone, you see the volcanoes all nicely lined up behind you, spewing all that thick red gooey fire. But the water tide isn't exactly peaceful. Volcanoes near oceans and seas can even cause tsunamis. Great. Submarine earthquakes shake the ocean bottom and produce large, powerful waves. And don't even think about surfing on them. If there are volcanoes spitting out red-hot lava, then why hasn't all the ice in Antarctica melted? The answer lies beneath the Earth's surface. Tectonic plates barely move underneath there. It's pretty safe to say they're stable. So for such a large piece of land, the coldest continent on Earth, the few active volcanoes are insufficient to melt all the ice. The real reason why the ice is melting and water levels are rising is the warm ocean current around Antarctica. But this time, they're all erupting at the same time. With the volcanoes discovered, who knows how many are left underground, covered in ice. And that's the scary part. Some of these volcanoes are hidden so deep beneath the icy surface that they now heat up from the lava spewing out. The ice begins to destabilize everything around. The ice on the ridges begins cracking open little by little. Like giant cans of soda bursting open, lava shoots from the snowy depths, causing enormous cracks in the ground. And then, magma finds its way to the party. This uninvited guest will begin to melt the surroundings, causing the ground to destabilize even more. Slowly but surely, the ice around Antarctica will melt. And if all the ice is melted, the Earth's sea level would rise by around 230 feet. That means coastal cities would be submerged underwater. The ocean currents would be flipped around, and hurricanes and typhoons would not want to take a break. Marine life would be in danger, and many small islands would completely disappear. And not to mention the smoke in the air that would travel around the world, halting many flights in the southern region. And if the winds were strong enough, the whole world. The economies would flop, and a worldwide panic would begin. Health emergencies all year round. Yeah, a real nice picture.
A magnitude 15 earthquake has the potential to completely destroy our planet and evaporate all the water in a matter of seconds, leaving Earth uninhabitable. Over 500,000 earthquakes happen annually, but none have a magnitude of 15. 90% of quakes occur in the terrifying Ring of Fire zone located around the Pacific Ocean. The ground there is like jello. It shakes almost constantly. The most powerful earthquake to have ever struck Earth had a magnitude of 9.5. That much power can lengthen or shorten the day. But there's probably an earthquake in the confines of your own home now caused by a speck of dust landing on a table. But it has a power of negative 15 magnitudes. Earthquakes happen when tectonic plates move. They're like Lego pieces that are not properly secured, and when they move up, down, or hit one another, the ground also moves, triggering earthquakes. This tectonic energy acts like a battery. It stores energy for a long time, up to 500 years. When this stored energy is released in a sudden burst, the consequences are horrifying. Even the strongest structures submit to this relentless force that leaves a trail of destruction in its path. In some instances, earthquakes can even trigger tsunamis, amplifying the chaos. Such a crazy amount of power can split the ground open and cause severe damage. The strength of an earthquake is measured by the Richter scale, but now it's being replaced by the moment magnitude scale. When there's an earthquake, we hear about how strong it is. It's usually from 1 to 10. Luckily, we haven't had a Richter scale earthquake yet. The most powerful earthquake to have ever happened in modern history occurred in Chile in the 60s. It was around 9.5 on the Richter scale, and it altered Earth's rotation and messed up the length of the day by around 2 milliseconds. It also triggered a massive tsunami and affected a vast area of 155,000 square miles. The Richter scale doesn't actually have a limit. Still, anything above 25 doesn't need measuring, because if that ever happened, we would simply turn into dust, and nobody would care to measure this disaster. As we said, the strongest earthquake had a magnitude of 9.5. If this magnitude had been just 0.5 stronger, it would have created a ruptured line 2,174 miles long. That is almost 7 times the size of Wyoming. A magnitude 11 earthquake would create a crack halfway around the world. Massive tsunamis would hit coastal areas, destroying everything, and Earth would get into a massive environmental crisis. If you love hiking, you would have new mountains to explore, created by the terrifying earthquake. Even the temperature would increase because of volcanic eruptions and the resulting greenhouse gases. It would turn our planet into a hot oven. The safest places would be far away from any buildings, seas, oceans, and mountains where there would be a low chance of a landslide. Countries unprepared for earthquakes would be totally destroyed, and cities would turn into piles of rubble and dust. Going up on the Richter scale would only make things worse. But don't worry, an earthquake of that power is impossible. Earth's crust doesn't have enough energy to produce such earthquakes. But there is something that has much more power and can produce mega earthquakes. Asteroids are powerful enough to destroy our planet, as we all know from the dinosaur era. That asteroid was around 6 miles long, and it caused massive damage to the planet. It triggered earthquakes that shook the ground constantly for months. These terrifying quakes were about 50,000 times stronger than the Chile earthquake. They also triggered a tsunami that was 30,000 times more powerful than the Indian Ocean tsunami. And the latter was one of the most devastating tsunamis to have ever struck Earth. The earthquakes caused by the asteroid had a magnitude of 11. making it the most powerful and scariest natural disaster ever. And let's hope it stays that way. The Indian Ocean tsunami affected only certain areas of the world. Meanwhile, the asteroid tsunami affected every part of the world and had 33-foot-tall waves. Even if you had traveled to the most remote place on Earth, you wouldn't have been able to hide from this Grim Reaper. A 15-magnitude earthquake wouldn't be 15% stronger than the Chile earthquake. The scale doesn't work like that. It would be around 100 million times more powerful than a 9.5 magnitude quake. It could make all the water on Earth evaporate, leaving us devastated and without any H2O to survive. All ecosystems would collapse. All food chains would be broken. And only some super strong bacteria would probably survive the impossible. That is only a fraction of the frightening things that could happen. The ocean is like the AC for our planet. Without it, Earth would be super hot. The ocean also serves as a shield from the sun's powerful rays. It acts as a heat absorber and cools Earth. Scientists think that the most dangerous thing would be the inability of Earth's crust to survive the violent shakes of the 15-magnitude earthquake. If our planet miraculously survived and didn't turn into dust, there would be massive openings in its crust. The ground would become gelatinous. It would randomly move up, down, left, and right, and no building would survive that. Our civilization would be brought back to the Stonehenge era. Tectonic movements like this are devastating. A similar thing happened in Japan when tectonic plates moved 165 feet from each other and then snapped back together, creating a 9-magnitude earthquake. No place on Earth is immune to this bone-chilling natural phenomenon. Still, certain places have higher chances of being destroyed than others, like the Ring of Fire, where 90% of earthquakes happen. This is a place where earthquakes are almost everyday occurrences. The Ring of Fire is located in the Pacific Ocean. It forms a ring around the continents that surround the Pacific. There, several tectonic plates meet, creating highly unstable ground. To make the problem much more terrifying, 75% of active volcanoes are located in this area. 90% of dormant volcanoes are also there, making this place extremely dangerous. Scientists carefully study this region to find a way to predict when the next earthquake might strike. The Ring of Fire is not the only place at risk of earthquakes. In California, along the San Andreas fault line, 2 tectonic plates have been storing power for more than 200 years. The San Andreas Fault is 715 miles long and has the potential for a massive earthquake. This region has its fear of violent earthquakes like the one that happened in San Francisco in 1906. It had a magnitude of 7.8 on the Richter scale. Scientists' predictions are terrifying. They say that the chance of a 6.7 magnitude earthquake is very high in the area. If all hell starts to break loose, you should know how to survive. Avoid anything that might fall on you, like windows, closets, or unstable ceilings. The official phrase from emergency experts is drop, cover, and hold on. Stay low to the ground. Hide under something stable like a table, and remain there until the shaking stops. Make sure to stay in your shelter for another minute or two, just in case there are aftershocks or loose debris. Use your nose and smell for gas. If you do smell it, don't turn the lights on or do anything that might ignite it. Stay strong and be safe.
In the high altitudes of northern China, there is one mountain that remains frozen all year round. It's a naturally occurring spot of cold earth. A thick layer of permafrost lies underneath the mountain's top layer of soil, freezing everything above it. The climate-defying pocket of frozen land covers over 26 feet of a mountain slope in Pingchuyen County, a place famous for its scorching hot summers, reaching highs of 90 degrees Fahrenheit. This frozen spot of land manages to survive the blazing temperatures due to the coarse blocky layer of soil covering the permafrost. This coarse soil prevents the hot climate from reaching and melting the permafrost, allowing the ground to stay frozen all year round. Argentina may be famous for its beautiful beaches and hot sun, but in southern Argentina, you can find Perito Moreno Glacier. This stunning blue glacier covers over 100 square miles and is constantly growing. When visiting this natural wonder, you might notice an archway of ice forming off the side of the glacier, reaching out to the nearby land. Suddenly, The archway ruptures and the ice collapses into the water below. This is completely natural. The glacier goes through a process of forming these arches until they collapse. It'll form another one in no time. On California's Glass Beach, there's no sand and only colorful gemstone-like pebbles called sea glass. Surprisingly, these beautiful pebbles are the result of garbage. For decades, the beach was used as a massive dumping ground for locals to abandon their glass, appliances, and even cars on the beachfront. The state eventually prohibited anyone from disposing of their garbage on the beach. Over the years, the waves broke down all the remaining junk and turned it into brightly colored pebbles that attract tourists from all over. The highest waterfall in the world, Angel Falls, can be found in southern Venezuela. The water there travels along one of the biggest tabletop mountains in Venezuela and plummets 2,500 feet down into the jungle below. That's 3 times taller than the Eiffel Tower. The water falls from so high that most of it evaporates into mist before even reaching the ground. Visitors can feel the mist settling on their skin from over half a mile away. In Scotland, hidden away from the main roads and tucked deep within the woodlands, is Fiddick Glen. This area looks like something out of an ancient fairy tale, with looming glass moss-covered rock formations and crimson red waters. The water's red color is due to the red sandstone lying beneath the shallow river. To get to this stunning natural beauty, you have to embark on a dangerous hike down steep, muddy hills, clambering onto trees to stop you from falling. But when you reach the bottom, it'll all have been worth it to watch the sunlight shine off the ruby waters and see the towering rocks of this enchanting world. With bubblegum pink water and a surrounding circle of emerald green forests, it's hard to believe that Lake Hillier is a real place. Located in Western Australia, no one can truly explain why the lake has pink color. However, scientists have theorized that the high quantities of salt in the lake have attracted a salt-loving pink bacteria called halobacteria, responsible for the lake's trademark shade. In a small peninsula in South America, there is one of the most beautiful natural wonders in the world, the Marble Caves. These look like any other caves from the outside. Inside these caves, the walls consist of smooth, swirling blue marble formations. Over thousands of years, water has eroded the marble deposits within these caves, forming this unique cave system. So while deep blue color seems like it's part of the marble, it's the reflection of the water that causes these blue shades along the cave walls. Azerbaijan's mud volcanoes are exactly what they sound like. Over 300 of these natural phenomena are located in Azerbaijan, more than anywhere else in the world. There have been over 200 eruptions since records began. Mud volcanoes are landforms caused by the eruption of mud, water, and gases. Pockets of gas form underground and force their way to the surface, eventually erupting and splattering mud everywhere. These volcanoes can be pretty dangerous. In 2006, a mud volcano erupted in Indonesia and coated an entire nearby village in thick mud. Pamukkale is a marvelous hillside of tiered thermal pools. The name of the Turkish city translates to Cotton Castle. The pools are made of travertine, a type of limestone that gives the hillside its stunning white color. In addition, the stone has geothermal properties, making the pools hot springs. There are 17 pools in total, and all are open to the public 7 days a week. The temperatures range from 95 degrees Fahrenheit all the way to 200